"You're nobody in this courtroom," Greg Mallory said, pointing at the metal pin on my jacket like it was a coffee stain. He said it on the third morning of jury duty. He said it in front of 11 jurors, 2 deputies, 1 clerk, and a judge who had not yet looked up. He smiled after he said it. That was the part people remember wrong. Greg Mallory did not snarl. He did not pound the rail. He laughed softly, like he had found lint on a church coat. "Nobody," he said again. By the end of that hearing, every officer in the courtroom would stand. Judge Nathan Bell would stop the verdict cold. Court clerk Denise Harlan would open the sealed part of my juror file, and Greg would learn what kind of record sits behind a quiet woman. But before the judge said, "General, please rise," there was the first morning. There was rain on Maple Street. There was Daniel's metal pin in my palm. There was my old habit of leaving 10 minutes early. I was 62 years old that spring, widowed 3 years, and living alone in the small white house Daniel Ward and I had bought in 1998. Maple Street was 6 blocks from the Sandusky County Courthouse. Most mornings I walked it. Not for romance, for knees. At my age, motion is cheaper than medicine. I put on a gray jacket, black slacks, and the small round pin Daniel had left in the velvet case on his dresser. It was not flashy. Brass edge, dark center. 1 star so worn the points had softened. I wore it because his hands had touched it last. That was enough. The case had a lock on it, a tiny thing with a brass clasp. I had not opened the lower tray since his funeral. Daniel had kept his notes there, receipts, names, things he did not want in a kitchen drawer. I told myself there was no need. Then I told myself that again. A person can make a habit out of not looking. The summons said to report at 8:30. I was in the courthouse by 8:12. The Sandusky County Courthouse sat off North Park Avenue, pale stone, square windows, old steps worn down by county shoes. Mill Creek people still called it the courthouse, like there was only one building in town that mattered. In some ways, they were right. You paid fines there. You filed deeds there. You got divorced there. You learned how small a town could feel when your name went into public record. I checked in with court clerk Denise Harlan at the jury desk. She wore navy glasses on a silver chain and had the tired patience of a woman who had explained parking validation to half the county. "Name?" she asked. "Ellen Ward." She found my packet. Then she stopped. It was not dramatic, just a pause. Her thumb held one corner of the file. Her eyes moved from the top sheet to the sealed addendum clipped behind it. I saw the red strip. Restricted review. Department of Defense ethics clearance. I had filled that form out because the court asked me to. I did not volunteer extra. Extra makes civilians nervous. "Mrs. Ward," Denise said, softer now. "Major General Ward is retired," I said. "Mrs. Ward is fine." Her eyes came back to my face. "Yes, ma'am." There it was, not loud, not public, a small correction in the air. I signed the juror roll with the same black pen I had used for 30 years. Block letters, clean line, no flourish. Denise slid me a badge. Juror 14. "Coffee is down the hall," she said. "Judge Bell runs on time." "So do I." She gave me a quick look, not a smile exactly, more like recognition checking its footing. The jury room smelled of toner, damp wool, and burnt coffee. 12 chairs, 1 wall clock, a stack of old magazines nobody wanted. By 8:26, most of us had gathered. A retired teacher named Ruth Conway sat near the window. A young mechanic named Jesse Park kept tapping his knee. A nurse from Toledo Hospital, Paula Green, read every notice on the bulletin board. Then Greg Mallory came in. He was 50 or so, thick wristwatch, pressed shirt, county business tan. He had the kind of voice that arrived before the rest of him. "Morning, folks," he said. "Looks like we're the chosen few." No one laughed much. He laughed for us. I knew his name before he said it because Mallory Civil Supply had trucks all over Sandusky County. Blue letters, white doors, gravel, pipe, drainage tile, bridge forms. If a county road got dug up, a Mallory truck usually rolled past. Daniel had mentioned the company once, not kindly. I could hear his voice in my kitchen 2 years before he died. Watch those small suppliers, Ellen. The big fraud wears a tie. The small fraud wears dust. Daniel had served 27 years in logistics before a heart that had carried too much finally asked for rest. He did not gossip. If he named a company, he had a reason. Greg took the chair at the head of the table. No one had elected him. Some men sit down like the room has been holding their place. At 9, Denise led us into courtroom 2. Judge Nathan Bell was already on the bench, tall, silver hair, rimless glasses. A former JAG officer, though most people in town only knew he had once been military legal. That phrase does a lot of work for people who do not want details. The case was State of Ohio versus Marlowe Aggregate Services, a procurement fraud case, bad gravel, false billing, a damaged county bridge job near Route 53. A veteran-owned subcontractor named Pike Roadworks had taken the blame when the base layer failed. The state said Marlowe had billed premium limestone and delivered cheap fill. The defense said it was a bookkeeping error. Bookkeeping error. That phrase has buried more theft than any shovel. The attorneys gave us their clean voices. The prosecutor was a narrow man named Sutter. The defense lawyer was Ms. Vance, sharp suit, red folder, calm hands. We were told to listen. We were told not to investigate. We were told not to discuss the case until deliberations. I followed the rules. Rules are not decoration. On the first day, I wrote down dates. March 3rd, purchase order issued. March 7th, truck log to Ottawa County. March 8th, invoice submitted. March 9th. Material certificate signed. One witness, a driver named Carl Henson, said he hauled 2 loads to the Mill Creek Bridge site on March 8th before lunch. His mileage claim said 84 miles by 11:10 in the morning. I wrote that down. 84. Then the state introduced the scale ticket. Same truck, same plate number. Logged at a quarry outside Toledo at 10:45 that morning. I underlined nothing. Underlining tells people where your mind is. I keep the line straight. That was what I told myself through briefings, hearings, audits, and rooms full of men who thought patience meant permission. I kept the line straight. At lunch, the jurors walked to Park Avenue Diner in loose pairs. I got black coffee and toast. Greg got meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and an audience. "Whole thing is county gravel," he said. "Nobody checks county gravel. That's the point." Ruth Conway frowned. "The state checks, don't they?" Greg waved his fork. "On paper, sure, but paperwork is paperwork. You can make paper say anything." He looked at me. "You writing that down too?" I closed my notebook. "It's lunch." "Just saying," he said. "Some folks make simple things complicated." Jesse Park nodded because he was young and Greg sounded certain. Certainty attracts people who are tired. Paula Green kept eating. I liked her for that. By the end of the first day, Greg had decided I was a problem. He did not say it straight. Men like Greg rarely start straight. They circle first. In the jury room, he leaned back and glanced at my pin. "That from your husband?" he asked. "Yes." "Nice. My grandfather had some old service things, too. Medals, ribbons, all that." "All that," I said. His eyes moved over my jacket, my plain shoes, my gray hair pinned at the back. "You served too?" "I did." "What branch?" "Army National Guard." He made a small sound, not quite a laugh. "Weekend warriors," he said. The room went quiet. Not silent. Quiet. There is a difference. Quiet waits to see who will save it. Silent already knows no one will. Ruth Conway looked at the table. Jesse studied his phone. Paula looked at me. I placed my pen beside my notebook. Some weekends lasted 18 months, I said. Greg blinked once. Then he smiled wider. Fair enough. That was how men like Greg retreat. They call it fairness. The second day brought invoices, stacks of them, white sheets, blue stamps, county approval codes, dates that did not love each other. The prosecutor walked a records clerk through purchase orders from Sandusky County. The defense pushed hard on mistakes. Isn't it true, Ms. Vance asked, that county offices sometimes enter late dates? Yes. And isn't it true that truck logs are corrected after the fact? Sometimes. And isn't it true that ordinary clerks can confuse load numbers? Yes. Greg glanced at me when she said ordinary. I did not look back. I had spent years inside procurement systems at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and with the Ohio National Guard. I had seen honest mistakes. I had seen lazy mistakes. I had seen the kind of mistake that makes money walk uphill. This looked like the third kind, but I was a juror, so I listened. At 3:15, Judge Bell called a recess. Denise came in with a cart of water cups and paper napkins. She moved down the row, then stopped beside me. Mrs. Ward, she said, the court administrator asked me to confirm. Your packet contains a sealed service addendum. It stays sealed unless the judge orders review. I understand. Greg was close enough to hear. His chair creaked. Sealed what? He asked. Denise looked at him over her glasses. Juror qualification matter. Sounds fancy. It's routine, I said. Denise did not correct me. That told me something. She knew routine when she saw it. This was not routine. Greg watched Denise leave. Then he turned toward the others. Well, he said, we've got a mystery woman. Nobody answered. He did not need an answer. He only needed air. That afternoon, a witness from Pike Roadworks took the stand. His name was Alan Pike, 68, Navy veteran, bad left shoulder, clean boots. Pike Roadworks had 12 employees before the bridge failure. Now it had 4. The state asked him about the gravel. We installed what was delivered, Pike said. His voice stayed level. I respected that. Sutter showed him a delivery receipt. Did your company sign this? My foreman signed for arrival, not grade. Did you profit from substituting lower grade material? No. Did you know the material was lower grade? No. Ms. Vance stood for cross. Mr. Pike, your company was behind schedule, correct? 2 days. You faced penalties? Yes. You had motive to accept cheaper fill and keep working, didn't you? No. Greg nodded along, not because he knew, because he wanted to. Alan Pike kept both hands on the rail. His knuckles were square and pale. Ma'am, he said, my company did not cheat that bridge. Something in the room shifted, small. A straight statement can do that. I wrote 5 words. Pike denies grade knowledge. Then I wrote the date again. March 8th. During the ride home in my own car, I took North Park Avenue past the diner and turned toward Maple Street. Rain had left shallow water along the curb. A Mallory civil supply truck passed me near the light by Main. Same blue letters. Same white door. I watched it in the mirror. Daniel would have asked for the plate. I almost laughed at that. Then I memorized it. County habit dies hard. That night, I heated soup and set 1 bowl at the kitchen table. I still owned 4 bowls, though I used 1. The house was quiet in the practical sense. Refrigerator hum, furnace click, clock over the sink. Daniel's metal case sat in the desk drawer in the den. I had moved it there after the funeral because the bedroom felt too tender. I opened the drawer. The case was black leather, worn at both corners. The tiny lock still held. I had the key in a small envelope. I did not open it. Instead, I touched the top with 2 fingers. "Not yet," I said. Talking to the dead is not strange after marriage. It is just conversation with fewer interruptions. The next morning, I arrived at 8:09. Denise Harlan was already at the jury desk. "Morning, Mrs. Ward." "Morning?" She handed me my badge, Juror 14 again. Then she lowered her voice. "Judge Bell reviewed the docket notes last night." I waited. Denise looked toward the courtroom doors. "He asked whether you had any connection to defense procurement." There it was, a thin line from the sealed packet to the bench. "My disclosure was complete," I said. "I know." Her fingers touched the file. He said the same. I nodded once. Greg entered behind me. "More secrets?" he said. Denise's face closed. "Good morning, Mr. Mallory." He liked that. "Mr. Mallory. Some men collect little titles because they have no large ones." In the jury room, he took his usual seat. "Folks," he said, "we need to be practical when this goes to deliberation." Ruth adjusted her cardigan. "We haven't heard all the testimony." "I know that. I'm saying don't get lost in paperwork." He looked at me again. Paperwork can make anyone feel important. I poured coffee into a paper cup. It tasted like hot cardboard and surrender. "Paperwork sends people to prison," Paula Green said. Greg turned. "What?" She shrugged. "I work medical records. Paperwork matters." I liked her even more. Greg gave her his salesman's smile. "Sure, in hospitals. This is gravel." "Nobody checks county gravel," Jesse said, repeating him. Greg pointed at him. "Exactly. Nobody." There was the word again. By then, I had started a second page in my notebook. I made 3 columns: testimony, document, conflict. Under conflict, I wrote 1 line. Truck 12 cannot be in Toledo and Mill Creek at same time. I did not circle it. I did not show anyone. A jury is not a briefing room. You cannot command people into sense. You lead them to the line and hope they see it. Court started at 9 sharp. Judge Bell entered and everyone stood. He looked over us longer than before. His eyes passed Greg, then me. Nothing moved in his face. Former JAG. I recognized the stillness. Not cold, controlled. The state called a county procurement analyst named Martin Keene. He had thinning hair, a pale blue tie, and the exhausted look of a man who had been asked to explain a system nobody funded properly. Sutter walked him through the contract chain. Marlowe Aggregate supplied stone. Pike Roadworks installed it. A distributor named Lake Erie Materials brokered emergency loads. Mallory Civil Supply appeared on one exhibit as a backup hauler. Only once. 1 line, 3rd page, small print. Greg stopped moving. It was not much. His knee quit bouncing. His hand covered his mouth. I looked down at my notebook. Mallory Civil Supply, backup hauler, March 8th. There are moments in a room when the shape changes. Most people miss them. They expect thunder. Usually, it is a pen stopping. Sutter asked Keene about the line. Was Mallory Civil Supply paid under this contract? Keene checked the exhibit. Yes, for standby hall capacity. How much? $16,800. Greg's jaw tightened. Ms. Vance objected to relevance. Judge Bell allowed limited questioning. Sutter moved on. Too fast. I wrote the amount anyway. $16,800. Money was not the center. But money leaves tracks. At lunch, Greg did not go to Park Avenue Diner. He stayed in the jury room and made phone calls in the hallway. Quiet ones. When he came back, his smile had edges. "Everybody enjoying the circus?" he asked. No one answered. He looked at my notebook. "You sure write a lot for someone who doesn't say much." I listen better that way. "Must be nice, sitting there with your little pin," acting above it. I put my sandwich wrapper in my bag. I'm not above jury duty. No, he said. You're just above us. Ruth whispered, Greg. He leaned forward. No, I mean it. We all saw the clerk fussing over her file. Some people love being special. I met his eyes then. I had faced louder men in hotter rooms. Greg Mallory did not impress me much. Special gets people killed in process, I said. Accurate gets them home. He stared at me. The room did not know what to do with that, so it did nothing. After lunch, the defense called its own expert. He explained aggregate grades with slides. He used phrases like acceptable variance and non-material deviation. The jurors glazed over. Greg came alive again. Every time the expert said minor discrepancy, Greg nodded. Every time Sutter objected, Greg sighed. By 4, Judge Bell dismissed us with the same warning. No discussion, no research, no conclusions. In the hallway, Greg caught up with me near the courthouse stairs. Ellen, he said. I stopped. I did not like him using my first name. But jurors are civilians together. That was the rule. You're taking this too seriously, he said. It's a trial. It's a mess. There's a difference. Yes. He stepped closer. Look, I know these county jobs. Everybody rounds. Everybody patches invoices. Nobody's clean if you look hard enough. I kept my hands at my sides. That's an interesting defense. It's not a defense, it's reality. Reality still has dates. His smile left. For half a second, I saw the debt behind his face. Not guilt, pressure. There is a look men get when a payment is due. Don't make yourself important, he said. I looked past him to North Park Avenue, where traffic moved under wet trees. I'm Juror 14, I said. That's important enough? He laughed once. Right. Nobody with a number. Then he walked away. Nobody. He liked the word too much. That night, I did not sleep much. I sat in the den with Daniel's locked metal case on the desk. Beside it, I placed my jury notebook. I did not open the case. I did open the notebook. March 3rd, March 7th, March 8th, March 9th. Truck 12, Toledo Quarry at 10:45, Mill Creek delivery before lunch, Mallory Civil Supply backup hauler, $16,800. Nobody checks county gravel. I wrote Greg's phrase at the bottom of the page. Then I drew one straight line under it. Daniel had warned me about a procurement ring before he died. He had not named all the names. He had been careful. Daniel Ward was careful because he knew what loose words cost. He had worked with auditors out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 2009. Later, he consulted on state emergency procurement after the flooding in northern Ohio. He knew which vendors liked disasters. He knew which signatures traveled together. One evening, 3 months before his heart gave out, he had stood at the kitchen sink and said, "If they ever put you near county infrastructure records, don't look at the totals first. Look at movement." I had asked, "Whose movement?" He had said, "Trucks don't lie unless people teach them." Then he changed the subject. That was Daniel. He could hold a secret until it bruised him. I turned my pen between my fingers. I was not investigating. I was not searching outside the record. I was lining up what had been said in court. That is allowed. That is required. The next morning was the third day. The day Greg pointed at my pin. I woke before 5. The house was dark. I made coffee and ate toast standing at the counter. Old habit, bad habit, efficient habit. At 7:40, I took the metal pin from the little dish near the door. For a moment, I almost left it behind. Then I fixed it to my jacket. Not for show. For Daniel. The courthouse felt different that morning. More people in the hallway. 2 local reporters near the bulletin board. Alan Pike stood with his lawyer by the vending machines. He looked smaller out of the witness chair. Greg arrived with a red face and a phone pressed to his ear. "No, I've got it handled," he said. He saw me, his mouth shut. Denise Harlan watched him from the jury desk. That woman missed very little. Mrs. Ward, she said, handing me my badge. Her fingers brushed the packet under the counter. Just once. A warning, maybe. Or a promise. In courtroom 2, we took our seats. The state had one final witness, a records custodian from Lake Erie Materials. She brought the signed invoice, original copy, blue ink. Greg Mallory's signature sat near the bottom as receiving authority for backup hall capacity. Sutter put it on the screen. The date was March 8th. The timestamp was 10:52 in the morning. The courtroom air tightened. Even Jesse Park sat forward. Sutter asked, "Who signed this?" The custodian looked at the screen. "Gregory Mallory." "Is Mr. Mallory in this courtroom?" "Ms." Vance stood fast. "Objection." Judge Bell's head turned. "Counsel, approach." White noise came on. The lawyers moved to the bench. Greg stared at the screen. His name stayed there. Blue ink does not get embarrassed. After 2 minutes, Judge Bell sent us out. Denise led us to the jury room. No one spoke until the door closed. Then Greg stood. "That is exactly what I'm talking about," he said. Ruth blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Paperwork games. My company signs standby forms all the time. Doesn't mean anything." Paula folded her arms. "You didn't mention your company was in the case." "It's not in the case." "Your name is on the screen." He pointed at her. "Don't start." Then he turned on me. You've been sitting there like some statue waiting for this." "I've been listening." "No, you've been judging." "That is the job." He stepped closer to the table. His finger moved toward my jacket, toward Daniel's pin. "And that thing doesn't make you better than anybody," he said. I looked at his hand. "Move your finger." He froze, not because I raised my voice. I did not. Because command, when it is real, does not need volume. He lowered his hand. But he was not done. Men like Greg rarely stop at the first edge. When Denise opened the door to bring us back in, he said loud enough for the hallway to hear, "You're nobody in this courtroom." Then he pointed at the metal pin. "Acting like a little badge makes you somebody." Denise stopped in the doorway. The deputy looked up. Ruth said, "Greg, enough." But he had an audience now. That was all he needed. We filed back into the courtroom with Greg smiling like he had won something. I took my seat in the jury box. I placed my notebook on my lap. I watched the bench. Judge Bell returned. The white noise stopped. The room settled. Sutter stood. Ms. Vance stood. Greg sat 2 seats away from me, breathing through his nose. Judge Bell looked down at a document Denise had placed before him. It was not one of the exhibits. The paper had a red strip along the edge. My stomach went still. I knew that strip. Denise stood beside the clerk's station, hands folded. Judge Bell read for several seconds. No one moved. Then Greg leaned back and whispered, not softly enough, "Nobody checks county gravel." Judge Bell looked up. "Mr. Mallory," he said. Greg straightened. "Yes, Your Honor?" The judge's voice stayed calm. "I would advise you not to speak again until instructed." Greg's face changed color. A small thing, but satisfying in a disciplined way. Judge Bell turned 1 page. Then he looked at me. Not at Greg. At me. And for the first time in 3 days, I saw recognition reach his eyes before his mouth formed the words. Recognition is not always welcome. Sometimes it is a hand on a locked door. Judge Bell looked at me for 1 second too long. Then he looked away. That was the first mercy. "Members of the jury," he said, "you will remain seated." Greg swallowed. The lawyers stayed at their tables. Sutter had both hands on his folder. Ms. Vance held a pen, but she was not writing. Alan Pike sat behind the defense table with his shoulders tight. Judge Bell turned toward the clerk's station. "Mrs. Harlan," he said, "mark the sealed juror addendum for court review only." Denise answered, "Yes, Your Honor." Greg's head moved toward me, fast. Court review only. That was enough to bother him, not enough to tell him why. Judge Bell looked at the jury box again. "There has been a potential disclosure issue," he said. "It concerns a juror's outside business interest. It does not concern any juror's dignity. I expect all of you to remember that." Nobody breathed loudly after that. Not quiet. Still. Greg stared at the floor. The judge faced the lawyers. "Counsel, we will take this up outside the presence of the jury. No argument in front of them. No performance. No hints." Sutter nodded. "Understood, Your Honor." Ms. Vance said, "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Bell's eyes moved to Greg. "Mr. Mallory, you are not to discuss your company, your signature, or any exhibit with other jurors. Do you understand?" Greg opened his mouth. The judge's voice hardened by 1 degree. "Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Good." Then the judge looked down at the red-edged paper again. "Juror 14, he said. I lifted my eyes. "You will also not discuss your sealed qualification materials. That includes any prior service, clearance, appointment, or review authority listed there. Do you understand?" "I do, Your Honor." Greg heard those words. Prior service, clearance, review authority. He did not understand them, but he heard them. That was worse for him. Judge Bell closed the folder. "Mrs. Harlan, remove the jury." Denise opened the side door. We rose. Greg stood too fast and bumped the rail with his knee. No one laughed. In the jury room, the first sound was Jesse Park's chair scraping the tile. He sat by the window and rubbed both hands over his face. Paula said, "Well?" Ruth whispered, "Lord help us." Greg walked to the coffee machine. He did not pour anything. He pressed 1 paper cup against the counter until it folded. "You all heard the judge," he said. Paula looked at him. "We heard plenty." He said, "Don't discuss it." "I'm not discussing it." "You're implying." She leaned back. "You're sweating." Greg threw the cup in the trash. It missed. Nobody moved to pick it up. I sat at the end of the table and opened my notebook to a clean page. I did not write about the sealed addendum. That was not evidence. It was my problem, and I had lived long enough to know the difference. I wrote 1 line. Greg signed at 10:52. Then under it, I wrote another. "Custodian says original blue ink." Ruth watched my hand. "Mrs. Ward," she said softly, "are you all right?" "Yes." "You sure?" "I'm not the one with the signature on the screen." That ended the room for a while. Denise came back 20 minutes later. She carried her clipboard against her chest. "We're still in recess," she said. "Restrooms are available. No hallway conversations." Greg said, "How long?" Denise looked at him. "As long as the court requires." He tried a small laugh. It died early. "I have calls to make." "No, sir. My office needs me. The court needs you here." He stepped toward her. "You don't understand my business." Denise did not step back. "I understand a direct order from the bench. That woman had never worn a uniform, as far as I knew, but she understood structure. Some people do." Greg turned away from her and looked at me. "This is ridiculous," he said. "1 invoice. I capped my pen. The judge said don't discuss it." "I'm not discussing evidence." "Yes, you are." His face tightened. Ruth said, "Greg, sit down." He did not. The door opened again before he could answer. A deputy stood there. "Mr. Mallory," he said, "the court needs you." Greg's eyes flicked to all of us. "For what?" The deputy did not blink. Now, sir. Greg followed him out. The door closed. Jesse exhaled. That's not good. Paula said, Depends who you are. I looked at my page. My hand was steady. That surprised me a little. At 62, fear changes shape. It no longer runs through the legs first. It sits in the chest and waits to see what you will do. Ruth leaned closer. Were you really in procurement? I kept my eyes on the notebook. I can't discuss sealed materials. I'm sorry. No harm. She folded her hands. He shouldn't have said that to you. No. It was the shortest true answer. After a while, Denise returned with a tray of water cups. She set one near me and did not meet my eyes. That told me more than words. The sealed paper had been opened. Somewhere outside that room, my old life was on a table in front of strangers. I had spent years keeping work separate from rooms like this. Maple Street was quiet. Park Avenue Diner served weak coffee and good eggs. The courthouse had a metal detector that beeped at belt buckles. I had wanted civilian life to stay civilian, but records do not retire, neither does accountability. I touched Daniel's pin once, low enough that no one saw. I keep the line straight. Greg came back 35 minutes later. He looked smaller, not beaten. Greg Mallory did not know how to be beaten yet, but the shine had come off him. His tie was loosened. His face had settled into a hard, flat look. The deputy stayed by the door until Greg sat. Denise entered behind them. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, court is resuming. We stood. Greg did not look at me when we walked back in. That was new. In the courtroom, Judge Bell was already seated. The red-edged document was gone from the bench. In its place sat the invoice with Greg's signature and 2 other exhibits. Sutter looked alert now. Ms. Vance looked controlled in the expensive way lawyers learn. Judge Bell addressed us first. Members of the jury, I have conducted a limited inquiry. Mr. Mallory remains seated as a juror for the moment. For the moment. Greg's jaw moved. You are not to speculate about that inquiry. You are not to discuss it. The trial continues. He turned to Sutter. Proceed. Sutter called the records custodian back. Her name was Nora Finley. I had missed it before because the room had tightened around Greg's signature. She returned to the stand with a neat folder and cautious eyes. Sutter said, Ms. Finley, before the break, you identified an invoice bearing Mr. Mallory's signature. Yes. I want to ask about the timestamp. Ms. Vance stood. Objection, foundation. Lay it, Judge Bell said. Sutter nodded. Ms. Finley, how are Lake Erie Materials invoices time-stamped? Are dispatch software stamps when the receiving authority signs? Is it manually entered later? No. Can it be changed? Only with supervisor credentials. Changes leave an audit note. Sutter handed her another page. Do you see any audit note? She looked. No. What does the timestamp show? March 8th, 10:52 a.m. And what did this invoice authorize? Standby hall capacity for emergency aggregate. Through which company? She glanced at the page. Mallory Civil Supply. Greg stared straight ahead. Sutter clicked the remote. Another document appeared on the screen. Now look at State Exhibit 34. What is that? Nora Finley answered, a mileage certification. For what vehicle? Truck 12. My pen stopped. There it was. Sutter asked, who submitted it? Mallory Civil Supply. Ms. Vance stood again. Objection. Relevance and prejudice. Judge Bell looked at the exhibit. Response? Sutter kept his voice level. Your Honor, the defense has argued the bad material was accepted by Pike Roadworks and not connected to upstream billing. This shows movement tied to the delivery chain. Ms. Vance said, "It also points at a seated juror." Judge Bell did not like that sentence. "Counsel, approach." White noise again. Greg's fingers gripped his knees. The lawyer spoke at the bench. The judge listened. Denise stood beside the clerk's desk with her chin slightly lifted. Alan Pike watched the screen as if it might answer a question he had carried for months. I looked at the mileage certification. It was small on the monitor, but the date was clear. March 8th, departure, Toledo Yard, 10:30 a.m. Arrival, Mill Creek Bridge Site, 11:12 a.m., 42 minutes. That road could not be driven that fast in a loaded truck. Not from Toledo to Mill Creek. Not through morning traffic. Not with county restrictions. Not with the bridge detour at Route 53. And it could not happen if Greg was signing a receiving invoice at 10:52 somewhere else. Sutter had finally found movement. Or someone had handed it to him. The white noise stopped. Judge Bell said, "The objection is overruled for limited purposes. The exhibit may be discussed as to chain of delivery and billing. The jury will not consider it for any purpose outside the instructions I will give." Ms. Vance sat. Sutter stepped closer to the witness. "Ms. Finley, does the mileage certification list a driver?" "Yes." "Name?" "Raymond Cole." "Employer?" "Mallory Civil Supply." "Does it list the cargo?" "Crushed limestone, emergency grade." "Does it list the route?" "Yes." Sutter paused. "Please read the first destination line." Nora Finley looked down. "Toledo Holding Yard to Mill Creek North Abutment." "And the certified arrival time?" 11:12 a.m. Sutter let the number sit. Then he asked the clean question. "How far is that route?" 61 miles by the listed route." A murmur moved through the back benches. Judge Bell lifted his eyes. The room settled. Sutter said, "Could a loaded aggregate truck legally make that route in 42 minutes?" Ms. Vance rose. "Objection. Calls for speculation." "Sustained," Judge Bell said. Sutter nodded. "Does the certification include a required speed compliance statement?" "Yes." "Read it." Nora Finley did. "Driver certifies compliance with posted limits and commercial hauling restrictions." Sutter walked back to his table. "Thank you." Ms. Vance crossed quickly. "Ms. Finley, your company handles many invoices?" "Yes." "Thousands?" "Yes." "Errors happen?" "They can." "Timestamps can be wrong?" "Rarely." "But possible?" "With an audit note." "You said that." "Yes." She tried another line. "You don't know where Mr. Mallory was standing when he signed?" "No." "He could have signed electronically?" "No." Ms. Vance paused. "Why not?" Nora Finley pointed to the exhibit. That form required wet signature, original copy, blue ink. Blue ink again. Small things hold. Ms. Vance returned to her table. No further questions. Judge Bell looked at the clock. "We will stop there for the day." Greg turned his head sharply. The judge continued. "Jurors are reminded of my instructions. Do not discuss this case with anyone. Do not discuss the inquiry. Do not research any person, company, route, military record, or contract." Military record, there it was again. Greg heard it. So did everyone else. Judge Bell dismissed us. The deputy held the side door while we filed out. In the jury room, Greg grabbed his coat. Paula said, "We're supposed to wait for Denise." He ignored her. The door opened before he reached it. Denise stood there. "Mr. Mallory," she said, "you'll remain a moment." "I need to leave." "The court is aware." "I said I need to leave." "And I said remain." Greg looked past her to the deputy in the hall. Then he stepped back. The rest of us were released one at a time. Denise gave me my purse last. Her hand covered mine briefly. "Go straight home, Mrs. Ward." "I plan to." She lowered her voice. If anyone approaches you, call the number on your badge. I looked at her. Has someone approached a juror? Her eyes did not move. Call the number. That was an answer. Outside, North Park Avenue was damp and gray. The courthouse steps shone under the lamps. Reporters stood near the curb, but the deputy moved us along. I reached my car without speaking. A black pickup sat across the street by the diner. Its engine idled. I noticed it because the front plate was bent upward, and because a man inside watched the courthouse door too hard. I got in my car and locked it. The pickup did not follow me when I pulled out. It turned the other way, toward Maine. Still, I drove past Maple Street once before going home. Old habits can look foolish. They can also keep you living calmly. At home, I left the porch light off until I was inside. Then I turned it on from the hall switch. I stood there with my keys in my hand, listening. Refrigerator, furnace, nothing else. I set my purse on the kitchen table and took out the court badge. Juror 14. The plastic had scratched along one edge. Nobody with a number. I placed it beside my notebook. Then I went to the den. Daniel's metal case was still in the drawer. I opened the drawer halfway and looked at it. Black leather, tiny lock. Corners worn from his hands, then mine. Not yet. I closed the drawer. The phone rang at 7:19. No name on the screen. Local number. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. This is Ellen Ward. A man breathed once, then he said, You're making trouble for people you don't know. His voice was low, not Greg's, younger. I looked at the kitchen window. It showed my own face and the dark yard behind it. You have the wrong number. No, ma'am. Ma'am, that irritated me more than the threat. He said, County work is county work. Don't drag old uniforms into it. I did not sit down. Who is this? You don't need names. You called my house. That was your mistake. Silence. Then he said, Back off the notebook. The line clicked dead. I held the phone a few seconds longer. Then I called the number on the back of my badge. Denise answered on the second ring. Court administrator's line. This is Ellen Ward. Her voice changed. What happened? A man called my house. What did he say? I repeated it exactly, word for word. Tone does not go in a report, but words do. Denise did not interrupt. When I finished, she said, Are your doors locked? Yes. Stay inside. I'm calling Judge Bell's chambers and the sheriff's desk. I can call the sheriff. I know you can. Let us document first. That was good procedure. I respected good procedure. Mrs. Ward, she said. Yes. Do you have a place to stay tonight? I'm staying here. A pause. I thought you'd say that. You thought correctly. Keep your phone close. I will. After we hung up, I wrote the call in my notebook on a separate page. 7:19 p.m. Unknown local number. Back off the notebook. Then I sat at the table and drank cold coffee I had made that morning. It tasted terrible. I drank it anyway. At 8:12, a Sandusky County Sheriff's cruiser rolled slowly past Maple Street. It did not stop. At 8:45, it passed again. I slept in the chair for maybe 2 hours. At 4:30, I woke with my neck stiff and Daniel's voice in my memory. Trucks don't lie unless people teach them. I got up, made toast, and dressed for court. The pin went on last. My hand hesitated only once. Then it closed. The courthouse entrance was busy when I arrived. More reporters. 2 men from the county road office. A woman from Pike Road Works with red eyes and a stack of folders. Denise was not at the jury desk. A younger clerk handed out badges with shaking hands. I did not know her. Juror 14? She asked. Yes. She found my badge. Mrs. Harlan said you should wait by the side bench. I waited. Greg came through security at 8:22. He wore the same suit and a different tie. His eyes found me at once. He smiled. Not wide. Enough. You look tired, Ellen. I did not answer. He stepped closer, but not close enough for the deputy to stop him. Long night? The younger clerk looked up. I said, the judge's instruction still applies. Greg's smile thinned, always hiding behind rules. Rules are useful when facts are ugly. His eyes hardened. Then Denise appeared from the side hall. Mrs. Ward, she said. Greg turned. Denise ignored him. Judge Bell wants all jurors seated immediately. Greg said, including me? Denise looked at him then. For now. He did not like hearing his own uncertainty spoken out loud. We entered courtroom 2. Something had changed. 2 uniformed officers stood at the back wall, not deputies, uniformed officers from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I knew the shoulder patches before I let myself read them. Air Force Materiel Command. One was a captain. One was a chief master sergeant. They did not look at me. That was discipline, too. My throat tightened. I kept walking. Greg noticed them after he sat. His head turned, then turned back. He could not place them. That was the mercy he had not earned. Judge Bell entered. All rise. We stood. The 2 Air Force officers stood already. They did not move much. They did not need to. Judge Bell sat. Be seated. He looked older that morning, or perhaps less willing to be patient. Before the jury enters deliberations in this matter, he said, the court will address 2 issues. Greg's knee began moving again. Judge Bell turned to the clerk. Mrs. Harlan, call the first witness. A witness? The side door opened. A man in a gray county jacket walked in. He carried a slim folder and looked unhappy to be seen. Martin Keene, the procurement analyst, returned to the stand. He raised his hand. He swore in again. Sutter stood. Mr. Keene, did your office review State Exhibit 34 last night? Yes. Why? Because the mileage certification conflicted with prior testimony and contract records. Ms. Vance stood. Objection. This is beyond scope. Judge Bell said, overruled. The court authorized limited recall. Sutter continued. What did you compare? The mileage certification, the Lake Erie invoice, and the county weigh station log. My pen found the page. New document. Not surprise? Consequence. Sutter handed him a record. Is this the county weigh station log? Yes. For March 8th? Yes. Does truck 12 appear? Martin Keene adjusted his glasses. Yes. What time? 9:58 a.m. Location? North Park temporary scale. The jury shifted. North Park. That was 10 minutes from the courthouse. Less if lights were good. Sutter asked, what was the listed load? Recycled fill. Not emergency grade crushed limestone? No. And the weight? Under the required weight for that route. Sutter let that sit. Does the log show the driver? Yes. Name? Raymond Cole. Greg's face had no color now. Sutter asked, so truck 12 was at the North Park temporary scale at 9:58, listed with recycled fill. Later, Mallory Civil Supply submitted a mileage certification saying it left the Toledo holding yard at 10:30 with emergency grade limestone. Is that correct? Martin Keene took a breath. That is what the records show. Ms. Vance stood. Objection to characterization. Sustained as to phrasing, Judge Bell said. The answer stands as to records. Sutter nodded. No further questions. Ms. Vance crossed with care. Mr. Keene, logs can contain errors? Yes. Drivers can enter wrong cargo descriptions? They can. Temporary scales are busy during emergency repairs? Yes. So you cannot say fraud occurred. Martin Keene looked at the jury. I can say the records don't line up. Ms. Vance pressed, but not fraud. No, not by myself. She sat. Judge Bell looked toward the defense table. Any redirect? Sutter stood. One question. Mr. Keene, what happens when records don't line up on an emergency infrastructure contract? Martin Keene answered plainly. We suspend payment and refer the file. To whom? The county prosecutor if needed. Greg shut his eyes, only for a second. Judge Bell excused the witness, then he turned to us. Members of the jury, you have now heard evidence concerning documents connected to companies and persons not originally charged in this matter. You will receive instructions on how to consider that evidence. His gaze moved across all 12 of us. No juror is to punish a party for the conduct of a non-party. No juror is to protect a non-party because of personal interest. The verdict must rest on the evidence and law. He paused. The second issue concerns juror qualification. Greg's head came up. Denise stood with a sealed folder against her chest. The red strip showed. Not opened yet. Not fully. Judge Bell said, "The court has reviewed sealed materials outside your presence. Those materials do not disqualify Juror 14. They do establish that Juror 14 disclosed all required information before service." He looked at Greg. The court has also reviewed the jury questionnaire of Mr. Mallory. Greg's mouth opened. Judge Bell raised one hand. Do not speak. Greg obeyed, barely. Judge Bell continued. Mr. Mallory disclosed ownership of Mallory Civil Supply. He did not disclose active payment ties to a contract chain listed in the preliminary case summary. Ms. Vance stood. Your Honor, may we approach? No. The room held its breath. Judge Bell's voice stayed even. This is not argument. This is the court's finding as to juror administration. Sutter sat very still. Judge Bell looked at Greg. Mr. Mallory, you are removed from the jury panel. You will remain in the courtroom pending further instruction. Greg rose halfway. What? The deputy stepped closer. Judge Bell's tone did not change. Sit down. Greg sat. His face went red again. Red with fear this time, not anger. You can't just remove me, he said. Judge Bell leaned forward. I can. I have. You will be silent. Greg looked at me then. It was not a look of contempt anymore. It was accusation. As if I had made him sign his own name. As if I had driven truck 12 past the North Park scale. As if my notebook had invented time. Judge Bell turned to the alternate. Juror 13, you are now seated. The alternate, a quiet man named Howard Lane, moved into the empty chair. He carried no drama with him, just a notebook and a careful face. Greg was guided to the front bench near the wall. Not in custody, not free either. That middle place can teach a man something. The two Air Force officers at the back did not move. Judge Bell addressed us again. You will hear closing arguments after the morning recess. Then he looked toward Denise. Mrs. Harlan, take the jury out. As we rose, Greg whispered one word. Nobody. It was meant for me. It reached the bench. Judge Bell's eyes lifted. Mr. Mallory, he said, you are already one step past wisdom. Greg stared forward. Denise opened the side door. I walked out with the others. In the jury room, no one spoke for almost a minute. Then Jessie said, he's gone. Paula answered, from the jury. Ruth looked at me. What happens now? I closed my notebook. Now we listened to closing. Howard Lane sat where Greg had sat. He folded his hands on the table. I'll need to catch up through instructions, he said. Paula pointed to the evidence binders stacked by the wall. We all will. That was the first useful thing anyone had said in that room since the trial began. Denise came in with a fresh pot of coffee. Her eyes met mine for half a second. Not sympathy, confirmation. The hidden asset had done only what it was supposed to do. It had not saved me from service, It had not made me special. It had kept a careless man from turning my silence into suspicion. That was enough for the morning. At recess, we were allowed to stretch in the jury room but not leave the floor. Greg stayed outside in the courtroom under watch. His phone had been taken for review of juror contact rules. I learned that because the deputy asked Denise where to place it, and Denise said, "Evidence envelope, clerk's initials." Greg heard that too. He said, "That's my property." Denise answered, "It still is." "Then give it back. When the judge orders it. You people are enjoying this." She looked at him with the calmest face in Sandusky County. "No, sir. We're recording it." That sentence followed me back into the jury room, recording it. A system is only as honest as its records. A person, too. When closing arguments began, Sutter did not pound the table. He did not need to. He stood in front of the jury box with 3 exhibits on a board: the delivery receipt, the mileage certification, the North Park way log. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this case started as a bridge repair case. It is still that. But bridges are built from records before they are built from stone." Ms. Vance objected. Judge Bell said, "Argument. Overruled." Sutter went on. "You heard that Pike Roadworks installed what arrived. You heard that Alan Pike denied knowing the material was wrong. You heard that Truck 12 was claimed in Toledo at 10:30 and near Mill Creek at 11:12. Then you heard the county log. Same truck, same driver, North Park scale, 958, different material." He picked up the invoice. "And now you know who signed backup hall capacity at 10:52. Greg sat on the front bench with both hands clasped. Sutter did not look at him. That was wise. "This is not a trial of Greg Mallory," Sutter said. "The judge will tell you that. But his documents matter because they touch the chain that brought material to that bridge." He turned toward Alan Pike. "A small company trusted the load. A county trusted the paperwork. A bridge failed inspection. Someone wants you to call that confusion?" He faced us again. "It is not confusion when the same truck wears 3 stories in one morning." I wrote that down. 3 stories. Not because I liked the phrase, because it was accurate. Ms. Vance's closing was better than I expected. She stood without notes for the first 5 minutes. "Suspicion is not proof," she said. "Bad paperwork is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. A veteran-owned company deserves fairness. So does every defendant. The state wants you angry at Mr. Mallory. Don't be." She walked slowly. "This courtroom has had enough distraction. Your job is not to solve county contracting. Your job is to decide whether Alan Pike knowingly accepted improper material and billed the county for compliant work." That landed with Ruth. "I saw it. It landed with me too. A verdict is not a broom. You cannot sweep all dirt into one charge." Ms. Vance pointed to the contract. "Pike Roadworks signed delivery arrival, not grade certification. The state's own witness said that." She faced us. "If you remember one thing, remember the burden. They must prove knowledge, not carelessness, not bad luck. Knowledge." She sat. Alan Pike pressed one hand to his forehead. Judge Bell gave instructions after lunch. They were long, but they mattered. The elements, the burden, the difference between suspicion and proof, the limited use of Mallory documents, the duty to deliberate. Greg stayed on the front bench through all of it. That was part of the consequence. He had tried to steer the room. Now he had to watch it leave without him. Judge Bell turned to us. "Members of the jury, you may retire." Denise stood. We followed her out. The door closed behind us. For the first time, we were allowed to speak. The first sound was Howard Lane opening his binder. Paper rings, metal clip, one chair leg on old tile. That was deliberation beginning. Paula looked toward me first, then away. She had learned not to hand me a room just because I kept notes. That was good. A jury is not a column of soldiers. You cannot command it into honesty. You can only keep pulling it back to evidence. Ruth said, "Do we pick a new foreman?" Jessie gave a dry laugh. "We need a new everything." Howard looked around the table. The judge said 4-person. "Fine," Jessie said. 4-person. Nobody reached for the job. That was the first clean moment Greg had left us. Paula tapped her pen on the verdict form packet. "We should start with the charges." Ruth nodded. "Not with Greg." "Correct," I said. Every head turned. I had not meant to take the room. I had meant to answer the danger. Greg still had weight in that room even after he was gone. That is how loud people work. They leave instructions behind. I kept my hands folded. "We cannot punish Alan Pike for Greg Mallory," I said. "We also cannot ignore documents because Greg touched them." Howard leaned back. "That's where I am." Paula said, "Then who leads?" Jessie pointed his pen at Howard. "You're the alternate. You haven't been poisoned yet." Howard shook his head. "I heard enough, but I'll do it if no one objects." No one did. Howard wrote his name on the 4-person line in small, careful letters. Then he looked embarrassed, as if the ink had made him too visible. "First count," he said, knowingly accepting non-compliant material. Paula opened the instruction sheet. "Knowingly matters." "It does," I said. Jessie looked at me. "You're going to say that every time?" "If we forget it, yes." Ruth gave a short breath, almost a laugh. Not happy, just human. Howard read the elements. He read slowly. He did not perform. He did not add language. That mattered. Greg would have explained the law until it belonged to him. Howard let the paper stay the paper. When he finished, Paula said, "I don't think Pike knew at delivery." Jessie said, "He signed the receipt." "Arrival receipt," Paula said, "not grade." Ruth looked at the exhibit board against the wall. "But he billed the county later." "After inspection?" Jessie asked. I opened my notebook. "Before final inspection," I said. "According to the testimony." Howard looked down. "Can you show where?" I turned my notebook around. I did not slide it like a weapon. I placed it where they could read. "Day 2, I said. "County inspector says preliminary rejection came March 12th. Pike invoice submitted March 11th. Jessie frowned. "So he billed before he knew." "Before that rejection," I said. "Not before any other warning." Paula caught it. "Meaning?" I turned another page. Driver Cole testified the load was lighter than usual. He said he told the site lead. "That was not Pike," Ruth said. "No," I said. "It was Evan Pike." "His nephew," Jessie said. "Site lead," I said. Paula rubbed her forehead. "So knowledge may sit inside the company." Howard asked, "Is that enough for Alan?" No one answered quickly. That was good too. A rushed verdict has its own smell. It feels efficient, then it rots. We worked count by count. We made piles. Proven, not proven, unclear. Howard wrote them on a yellow legal pad. He crossed nothing out. He used arrows. At noon, Denise brought sandwiches in sealed boxes. Turkey, ham, cheese, 1 apple each, coffee that had given up hours before. "Any questions for the court?" she asked. Howard looked at us. Paula said, "Not yet." Denise nodded. Her hand rested on the door frame. She looked tired now. Not weak. Tired. I asked, "Is Mr. Mallory still in the building?" Denise paused. "He is available to the court." That was an answer made of brick. After she left, Jessie opened his sandwich. "That means yes." Ruth did not touch her food. "Do you think he called you?" The room went still. I looked at her. "We do not know that." "But you think it." I think facts should arrive with names. Paula said. The call mentioned the notebook. Jesse lowered his sandwich. What call? Ruth looked sorry at once. She had spoken past the line. Fear does that. Howard said, We shouldn't discuss outside matters. He's right, I said. Jesse stared at me. Someone called you? We are not using it, I said. That sounds like yes. It is not evidence against Alan Pike, I said. It is also not evidence for him. Paula closed her lunchbox. Then it stays out. Jesse shook his head. How do you stay that calm? I'm not calm. He blinked. I said, I'm disciplined. That ended it. Not because it satisfied anyone, because it reminded them we still had work. By 1:30, we had 3 votes leaning not guilty on the first count and 4 undecided. 5 leaned guilty on falsified billing. Howard would not call it deadlock. He called it unfinished. At 2:10, Paula asked for the delivery chain exhibits again. Denise brought in a cart with binders. The deputy rolled it to the table and left. On top was a sealed plastic sleeve marked Admitted Exhibits, copies only. Greg's signature sat on one of them in blue ink. Mallory Civil Supply. Backup hall capacity, 10:52 a.m., March 8th. I had seen it before. Everyone had. But deliberation changes paper. In trial, a document is something someone shows you. In the jury room, it becomes something you must answer to. Howard set the invoice beside the way log. 9:58 at North Park, he said. 10:52 backup hall. 11:12 arrival near Mill Creek. Paula pointed to the mileage certification. And 10:30 leaving Toledo. Jesse said, That's impossible. Ruth whispered, Nobody checks county gravel. No one moved. She looked at me. That's what he said. Yes, I said. Howard wrote the phrase on his pad, then stopped. Should I write that? No, I said. It was a juror statement, not evidence. He crossed it out with one line. Jesse said, But it explains why he pushed. It may, I said. We can report juror misconduct. We cannot convict Pike because Greg is dirty. Howard looked at the exhibits. Then what do we do with this? We use it for the supply chain, I said. Limited purpose. Paula looked at Judge Bell's instruction sheet again. The judge said exactly that. Jesse leaned forward. Here's my problem. Pike Roadworks is small. They don't own the truck. They don't certify the stone, but they build after installing. That could be negligence. Ruth said, Negligence isn't this charge. Right, Jesse said, but they had a site lead warning. About weight, Paula said, not grade. I turned to the testimony notes. Driver Cole said the load sat wrong, I said. His words, the site lead said to dump it anyway. Howard asked, Did Alan Pike know that before billing? That is the gap, I said. The room went quiet again. Not quiet, silent. That silence was not empty. It was 12 people finding the same hole. Howard said, We need clarification. Paula nodded. Can we ask whether knowledge by a site lead counts? I looked at the instruction. We can ask the court to clarify agency knowledge. Jesse squinted. Agency knowledge? Whether the company can know through an employee, I said, and whether that applies to Alan personally. Howard wrote the question. He read it out loud. Does knowledge by a site lead or employee satisfy the element that Alan Pike knowingly submitted a false bill? Paula said, Add if the defendant is charged as an individual. Howard added it. Denise returned for the note. She read it once, face blank, then folded it. I'll give this to the judge, she said. No delay, no drama, just the next move. We waited 19 minutes. I know because I watched the second hand, then stopped. Counting time is useful until it becomes fear with numbers on it. Ruth finally took one bite of her apple. Jessie looked at the door. Do they answer in writing? Usually, I said. Sometimes in court. Howard asked, You've served before? Once, I said, years ago. He did not ask more. The door opened. Denise stood there with the deputy. The court will answer in the courtroom, she said. Bring your notebooks. As we walked back through the side hall, I heard voices from courtroom 2. More people had come in. Reporters, road office staff, Mallory's woman with red eyes, and a man in a dark coat I recognized from the county procurement office. Not Martin Keene, his supervisor. He had testified for 10 minutes on the first day and spent most of it avoiding verbs. Greg was still on the front bench. He turned when we entered. He did not smile. Good. Alan Pike sat at the defense table, shoulders bent. Ms. Vance leaned toward him and whispered. Sutter had 2 folders open. Judge Bell looked down at our note. We sat. Judge Bell said, The jury has asked a legal question. I will read it into the record. He read Howard's question exactly. Then he looked at us. Members of the jury, you are to decide the charges against the named defendant based on the elements provided. The defendant is Alan Pike. Knowledge may be proven through direct or circumstantial evidence. You may consider evidence of what employees said or did only as it bears on whether the defendant himself had the required knowledge. You may not substitute an employee's state of mind for the defendant's unless the law and evidence support that conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt. He paused. The burden remains with the state. Ms. Vance kept her eyes down. Sutter did too. Both had wanted more. Neither got it. Judge Bell added, You are not to speculate about uncharged persons. You may consider admitted documents only for the purposes stated in the instructions. Greg shifted at uncharged persons. Judge Bell saw it. The judge's face did not change. That was almost worse. Denise let us out again. Back in the jury room, Paula sat first. That helps. Jessie said, It helps Pike. It helps the law, I said. He looked at me, then nodded once. Fair. We took another vote. First count, not guilty moved to 8. Falsified billing stayed split. Records tampering split differently. Theft by deception had almost no support now. The case had narrowed. That was not weakness. That was deliberation doing its job. Howard said, Falsified billing is where we are. Paula turned to me. What does your timeline say after March 8th? I gave them only what the testimony gave. March 8th, delivery and installation. March 9th, Evan Pike emails Alan that the Mill Creek load is short on volume. March 10th, Alan asks Mallory Civil Supply for corrected paperwork. March 11th, Pike Roadworks submits invoice to county with Mallory backup attached. March 12th, county inspector rejects material sample. Ruth said, He asked for corrected paperwork. Yes. Jessie said, That shows he noticed a problem. Or that he noticed missing paperwork, Paula said. Howard looked at the email exhibit. What did the March 9th email say exactly? We opened it. Evan Pike had written, Load from Cole looked light. Mallory says emergency grade. Need backup before county asks. Alan Pike had replied, Get certs today. I'm not eating another delay. Jessie said, That's not nothing. No, I said. Paula read it twice. But it doesn't say he knew it was wrong. Ruth leaned close to the page. I'm not eating another delay. Howard asked, Does that mean money? It means pressure, I said. Could be money, could be schedule. Jessie said, Could be both. The room accepted that. At 4:15, Denise brought a fresh legal pad. Howard had filled his. She also brought a sealed white envelope. For the foreperson, she said. Howard took it. What is it? Court response. Denise said. Administrative instruction. He opened it. Inside was one page. His eyes moved. Then he looked at Denise. Read it aloud, she said. Howard cleared his throat. The court instructs the jury that Mr. Gregory Mallory's removal from the jury panel is not evidence of the defendant's guilt or innocence. You may not consider Mr. Mallory's conduct during jury service as evidence against Alan Pike. If any juror believes Mr. Mallory made statements during deliberations before removal that affected a juror's ability to decide fairly, that juror shall inform the foreperson in writing. Jessie blew out air. That's us. Denise said nothing. Howard looked around. Does anyone need to write? Ruth's hand trembled. She opened her notebook. Paula did too. Jessie looked at me. Do you? Yes, I said. I wrote one sentence. Mr. Mallory repeatedly urged premature conclusions and referred to Juror 14 as nobody, but I can decide this case based on evidence and instructions. I folded it once and handed it to Howard. Others wrote longer. Ruth filled half a page. Paula wrote 3 lines. Jessie wrote nothing at first, then took the pen and wrote hard enough to scar the page. Howard collected them all and gave them to Denise. She placed them in a court envelope and sealed it in front of us. Thank you, she said. After she left, Howard sat down slowly. Paula said, I didn't think writing it would feel like that. What did it feel like? Ruth asked. Paula looked at the sealed door. Like taking his hand off my shoulder. No one answered. That was the second clean moment Greg had left us. At 4:40, Howard asked whether we could continue. We said yes. There was no appetite for going home with Greg's voice still in the room. We moved to the falsified billing count again. Jessie said, I'm leaning guilty now. Paula looked surprised. Why? Because of the March 10th request. He knew something wasn't right before he billed. Something, Paula said, not necessarily false material. Jessie tapped the invoice. He attached Mallory's backup. The backup was false. Ruth asked, did he know it was false? That's the question, Howard said. I looked at Alan Pike's reply email again. I'm not eating another delay. That sentence bothered me, not because it proved the charge, because it named the pressure that makes people accept bad paper. I said, there is a missing link. Jessie looked tired. You keep saving him. No, I said. I'm keeping the line straight. He sat back. There it was again. The only thing I trusted. Howard asked, what link? Mallory says emergency grade, I said. That is in Evan's email. Alan asks for certs. If Mallory supplied false certs, Alan may have relied on them. To convict Alan, we need proof he knew the certs were false when he submitted the invoice. Paula said, and we don't have it. Jessie said, we have his pressure. Pressure is not knowledge, I said. Ruth nodded. I agree. Howard marked another count leaning not guilty. Jessie rubbed both hands over his face. Then nobody pays. The word landed wrong. Nobody. I saw him hear it too. He lowered his hands. Sorry. I said, don't apologize for the word. Just use it better. He gave a tired smile. Fair. At 5:27, we had verdicts on 3 counts. Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. 1 count remained. Records tampering. That one was not clean. The state had shown an altered delivery receipt. The original had no grade checked. The copy submitted to the county had emergency grade marked in a box. Mallory's Civil Supply fax header sat at the top. Pike Roadworks account stamp sat at the bottom. Alan Pike's initials sat beside the added mark. Paula stared at it. This is the worst one. Yes, I said. Howard asked, could his initials have been copied? Sutter had asked that. The document examiner said no obvious copy artifacts, but she could not exclude a manual mark added later. Ms. Vance had made much of that. Jesse pointed at the initials. He touched this one. Ruth said, or someone put it in front of him. That still means he signed it, Jesse said. Paula said, initialed. Fine. Initialed. Howard read the element. Knowingly altered, falsified, or caused to be altered. I looked at the fax header. Mallory sent it at 2:16 p.m. March 10th. Paula checked my timeline. Before Alan asked for certs? After, I said. His email asking for certs was 9:04 a.m. Jesse said, so Mallory sends altered receipt. Alan initials. Pike submits. Ruth sat back. That sounds guilty. I did not answer. Howard saw me. Mrs. Ward? I kept looking at the document. There are moments when a page changes because you stop asking it the wrong question. Look at the box, I said. Paula leaned over. Emergency grade. No, I said. Look at the check mark. Jesse frowned. It's a check mark. The ink is black, I said. Alan's initials are blue. Howard pulled the exhibit close. That was mentioned? He asked. No, I said. Ruth said, can we use that? We can use what is on the admitted exhibit, I said, but we cannot invent expert testimony. Paula's voice sharpened. Black mark, blue initials. That means he may have initialed after the box was checked. Or before, Jesse said. Different pen. Yes, I said. It cuts both ways. Howard held the paper under the light. What does it prove? That the receipt passed through more than one hand, I said. Which we already knew. Jesse looked defeated. So we're stuck. No, Paula said. We decide whether it proves beyond reasonable doubt. Ruth whispered, I'm not there. Howard said, neither am I. Jesse looked at me. Are you? I thought of Greg on the front bench. I thought of his grin. I thought of the phone call. I thought of Truck 12 wearing 3 stories in one morning. Then I thought of Alan Pike's face when Ms. Vance said burden. No, I said, not on Alan Pike. Jesse stood and walked to the window. It did not open. Court windows rarely do. He faced the glass. Then Greg walks out laughing. Howard said, Greg is not our verdict. He's part of it. He is not the defendant. Jesse turned. You sound like her now. Howard looked at me. Good. That surprised me. It surprised Jesse, too. Howard said, she's right. At 5:58, Howard marked the last count not guilty. No one looked pleased. That is another thing people misunderstand. Not guilty is not the same as clean. It is only the state failing to carry what it was required to carry. Howard pressed the call button. Denise entered moments later. Have you reached a verdict? Howard looked around the table. Each of us answered with our faces before our mouths. Yes, he said. Denise's posture changed by 1 inch. I'll notify the court. We gathered our notebooks. Mine had pages of straight lines and dates. Greg's words sat in one margin from earlier testimony, crossed once. Nobody. I closed the cover before anyone could see it. Denise led us to the hall, then stopped before the courtroom door. Please wait, she said. Inside we heard movement, benches, shoes, a low murmur. Then Judge Bell's voice carried through the door. Bring in the jury. The courtroom was fuller than before. Reporters lined the back. The Air Force captain and chief master sergeant still stood near the wall. A third uniformed officer had joined them, a lieutenant colonel, Air National Guard patch on his sleeve. He knew who I was. I saw it in the stillness. He did not nod. He did not salute. Not there. Not yet. Greg saw him looking at me and followed his line of sight. For 1 second, he understood only that there was a thing he had not checked. That was enough. We took our seats. Alan Pike stood with Ms. Vance. Sutter stood at the state's table. Greg remained on the front bench, stiff as a man waiting for a bill he already knew he owed. Judge Bell looked at Howard. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Howard stood. "We have, Your Honor." "Please hand the forms to the bailiff." Howard gave them over. The bailiff walked them to Denise. Denise examined each page, then handed them to Judge Bell. He read silently. His face gave nothing away. Then he gave the forms back to Denise. "Mrs. Harlan, publish the verdict." Denise stood. In the matter of State of Ohio versus Alan Pike, Count 1, knowingly accepting non-compliant material, we the jury find the defendant not guilty. A sound moved through the room, not loud, not quiet either. Judge Bell lifted one hand. The sound died. Denise continued. Count 2, falsified billing, not guilty. Alan Pike shut his eyes. Ms. Vance put one hand on his arm. Count 3, theft by deception, not guilty. Sutter stared at the table. Denise turned the final page. Count 4, records tampering, not guilty. The room broke harder that time. Judge Bell struck the gavel once. Order. Greg laughed. It was small, but it carried. He said, "Told you, nobody checks county gravel." The Air Force captain's head turned. So did Judge Bell's. Denise stopped with the verdict packet still in her hand. My own hands stayed in my lap. Greg had not learned, or maybe he had learned the wrong thing. Men like Greg often mistake a legal limit for a personal victory. Judge Bell said, "Mr. Mallory." Greg lifted both hands. "What? Trial's over." Judge Bell's voice went lower. "Not for you." Greg's laugh vanished. Sutter rose halfway. "Your Honor?" Judge Bell said, "Sit down, counsel." Sutter sat. Ms. Vance remained standing beside Alan Pike, unsure whether her work was complete. Judge Bell looked at her. "Ms. Vance, your client will remain for discharge. You may be seated." She sat, but her hand stayed on Alan Pike's sleeve. Judge Bell turned to Denise. "Mrs. Harlan, bring me the sealed juror matter and the Mallory exhibit packet." The courtroom changed. Not delayed, changed. Denise moved to the clerk's desk. She opened the lower drawer with a key from a chain on her wrist. The red-striped folder came out first, then a brown exhibit packet with Greg's signature label on it. Greg stood. The deputy stepped in front of him. "Sit," Judge Bell said. Greg sat. Judge Bell placed the red-striped folder on the bench. He did not open it yet. Then he placed the brown packet beside it. 2 objects on wood, one sealed, one already admitted. He looked at the room. The verdict as to Alan Pike has been published. The jury's service on those charges is complete. Before discharge, the court must address conduct that occurred during these proceedings. Howard's shoulder tightened beside me. Judge Bell said, "Members of the jury, you are not accused of wrongdoing. You followed the court's instructions. You will remain seated." Greg said, "This is retaliation." Judge Bell looked at him. "One more word without leave, and you will be held in contempt." Greg swallowed the next word. I saw it sit in his throat. Judge Bell opened the brown packet first. That mattered. Evidence before sealed things, public record before private service. He held up the admitted Mallory document. "Mr. Mallory, this invoice bears your signature." Greg stared. "My lawyer should be here." "You may request counsel for any proceeding that requires it," Judge Bell said. "This is a record referral on juror conduct. You will answer only if instructed. At present, you will listen." Greg looked at the reporters, then away. Judge Bell continued. "During voir dire, you disclosed ownership of Mallory Civil Supply. You did not disclose active payment ties to the contract chain in this case. During trial, documents admitted into evidence showed Mallory Civil Supply submitted backup haul capacity at 10:52 a.m. on March 8th. He placed the page flat. At 9:58 a.m., Truck 12 was recorded at North Park temporary scale with recycled fill. At 10:30 a.m., Meite paperwork represented the same truck leaving Toledo with emergency-grade limestone. At 11:12 a.m., that load was tied to Mill Creek delivery records. He looked at Greg. Those are not opinions. Greg's face had gone pale. Judge Bell said, those are records. The chief master sergeant at the back did not move. The lieutenant colonel did not move. The captain did not move. I did not move either. Judge Bell touched the red-striped folder. This court also received threats reported by Juror 14 after court hours. The court makes no finding today as to the caller. That matter is referred separately. Greg said nothing. Smart at last or scared at last. Sometimes those look the same. Judge Bell broke the seal. Denise stood straighter. The room leaned without moving. He removed one page. I knew that paper by its weight before I saw the letterhead. Department of Defense. Ethics Clearance Addendum. Procurement Conflict Review. Not the citation. Not yet. A partial door only. Judge Bell read silently for several seconds. Then he folded the page once and set it face down. Members of the jury, he said, you are discharged from further deliberation in State versus Pike. You are not to discuss sealed juror qualification materials. The court will now take a recess before addressing referral orders. A reporter stood. Judge Bell, can you clarify? No. Denise stepped toward us. Jurors, follow me. Greg's head snapped toward the bench. That's it? Judge Bell looked at him. For now. That was all he gave him, for now. Denise opened the side door. We filed out past the front bench. Greg did not say nobody this time. He looked at the red-striped folder like it had teeth. In the jury room, no one sat. Jessie whispered, What was that paper? I put my notebook in my purse. Sealed, I said. Paula looked at me. Yours? Yes. Ruth's eyes filled, but she held herself together. Are you in trouble? No. Howard asked the better question. Is he? I looked toward the courtroom wall, where Judge Bell's voice had gone quiet behind wood and plaster. Yes, I said. But not because of me. Denise came in a minute later with a stack of discharge forms. You'll sign here, she said. Then you may leave by the side stair. Jessie took the pen first. Are we allowed to talk about the verdict? After discharge, yes, Denise said. Not sealed materials, not security referrals. Paula signed next. That's a lot we can't talk about. Denise looked at her. It should be. When my turn came, Denise placed the form in front of me. Her finger held the page steady. Mrs. Ward, she said quietly, Judge Bell asks that you remain in the building after discharge. The others heard. Greg had made privacy impossible. I signed. I'll remain. Ruth touched my sleeve. Do you want someone to wait? No, I said. Thank you. She nodded. Jessie stood awkwardly near the door. I said things wrong in there. You corrected them, I said. He accepted that with a grim little nod. Howard shook my hand. I'm glad you kept the line straight. So am I said. Then the jurors left one by one down the side stair toward North Park Avenue and the late afternoon traffic of Mill Creek. I stayed. Denise waited until the door closed. Come with me, she said. We walked through the narrow hall behind courtroom 2. The courthouse smelled of floor polish and old paper. It had smelled that way every day. That day I noticed it more because I was no longer deciding another man's fate. We stopped outside a small conference room. Denise knocked once. Judge Bell's voice came through. Enter. Inside were Judge Bell, the Air Force captain, the chief master sergeant, and the lieutenant colonel from the Ohio Air National Guard. The red-striped folder sat closed on the table. No one saluted. Not yet. Judge Bell stood anyway. "Mrs. Ward," he said. "Thank you for staying." I looked at the folder. "Is there a question?" "Yes," he said, "but not about the verdict." The lieutenant colonel spoke first. "Ma'am, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Harris, 178th Wing Legal Liaison." "Colonel," I said. He held my eyes for half a second, then nodded. The captain said, "We were asked to authenticate a Department of Defense ethics clearance letter attached to your juror packet." I assumed so. Judge Bell said, "It is authentic." "Yes." He studied me. "You knew it would not disqualify you. I knew it had been issued for disclosure. And you did not mention your rank." No one asked my rank. The Chief Master Sergeant's mouth tightened at the corner, not a smile. Approval kept inside regulation. Judge Bell said, "The court may need to state limited facts on the record, not operational detail, not sealed history. Your rank and prior procurement oversight authority may become relevant to explain why Mr. Mallory targeted your notes." I did not answer at once. There are records a person earns and records a person survives. Rank can be both. I had spent years letting it sleep because I did not need civilians to stand when I entered a grocery store. I did not need Maple Street to call me anything but Ellen. But Greg had built his cover on my silence. Daniel had warned me about that kind of mercy. I touched the metal pin through my jacket. Judge Bell saw the movement. He said, "You may object." "I know." "Do you?" "Yes." The room waited. I said, "State only what the record needs." Judge Bell nodded once. That was my intention. The captain opened a slim folder. "For accuracy, the clearance letter identifies you as Major General Ellen Ward, United States Army National Guard, retired. It notes your prior service as Deputy Adjutant General, Ohio, and your supervisory role over procurement audit support during the 2012 through 2014 infrastructure review." The words sat on the table, not heavy, exact. The Chief Master Sergeant added, "It also references Joint Task Force Buckeye Shield Logistics Oversight in 2011. I had not heard that name aloud in years. Denise stood near the door, still as a witness. Judge Bell said, "The court will not read all of that today." "Good," I said, "but enough." "Yes," I said, "enough." A knock came at the conference room door. Denise opened it a few inches. A deputy spoke low. "Judge Mr. Mallory is asking to leave." Judge Bell looked at the red-striped folder. "Tell him no," he said. "We are going back on the record." Denise did not move at once. She looked at Judge Bell, then at me, then at the officers. Court clerks learn to read danger without naming it. She opened the conference room door wider and spoke to the deputy. "Judge says no." The deputy nodded. "He's not happy." Judge Bell took his robe from the back of a chair. He put it on slowly. Not for drama, for order. A robe changes who gets to speak. Lieutenant Colonel Harris closed his folder. "Judge, do you want us in the courtroom?" "Yes," Judge Bell said. "All three of you." The captain asked, "Visible?" "Yes." The Chief Master Sergeant looked at me. "Ma'am?" I shook my head once. "No salutes." "Understood," he said. Judge Bell looked at him. "For now." That was the first time I felt the floor shift under my feet. Not fear. Control moving from private record to public record. I'd spent most of my adult life around rooms where people knew what a sealed page meant. In civilian life, sealed often sounds dramatic. In government work, it mostly means one mistake could hurt someone who is not in the room. Greg never understood that. Denise led us back through the narrow hall. The deputy at the corner stepped aside. I could see the courtroom through the side door window. Greg was standing near the front bench, talking with his hands. Sutter stood near the state's table. His mouth was tight. Ms. Vance had stayed beside Alan Pike. She had her briefcase closed, but she had not left. Reporters were still there. More of them now. Someone must have called someone. That is how courthouse news moves in Mill Creek. It starts at a bench. It reaches North Park Avenue before the elevator does. Judge Bell stopped with his hand on the side door. "Mrs. Ward," he said. "Yes, Your Honor." "You may sit in the gallery." "I'd rather stand near the wall." He studied me. "Why?" "Fewer eyes." The Chief Master Sergeant gave the smallest breath through his nose. Judge Bell nodded. "Very well." We entered from the side. The sound in the courtroom changed before anyone spoke. Chairs scraped, shoes settled. People noticed uniforms first. Then they noticed me behind them. Greg saw me last. He looked relieved for half a second. He still thought I was the problem. A problem you can see feels smaller than one inside a packet. Judge Bell took the bench. "All rise," Denise said. Everyone rose. Greg rose late. I stayed near the side wall with the officers. Not in front, not hidden. Judge Bell sat. "Be seated." The courtroom sat. He looked down at the files. The brown exhibit packet sat to his right. The red striped folder sat to his left. He did not open either. "Mr. Mallory," he said, "you asked to leave." Greg stood halfway. "Yes, Your Honor, I have a business to run." "You will sit." Greg sat. Judge Bell said, "You were a sworn juror in this matter." "I was the foreman." "You were a sworn juror," Judge Bell repeated. Greg's jaw moved. "Yes." "You gave answers under oath during voir dire." "Yes." "You heard the same instruction as every juror. You were to disclose any connection that might bear on impartiality." Greg leaned forward. "I told you I owned Mallory Civil Supply." "You did." "That's disclosure." "No," Judge Bell said. "That is a label." The room went silent. Not quiet, silent. Judge Bell opened the brown packet and removed Greg's invoice again. He placed it on the bench where everyone could see the top half. "This document was admitted during the trial," he said. "It carries your company name." Sutter rose. "Your Honor, the state is prepared to address." "Not yet," Judge Bell said. Sutter sat. Judge Bell turned one page. "It also carries your signature." Greg said, "Lots of papers carry my signature." "That may become relevant." Greg's face tightened. The reporters' pens moved. Judge Bell said, "Mallory Civil Supply certified backup hall capacity for Mill Creek bridge work tied to the same materials at issue in this trial." Greg said, "We were backup, not primary." The judge looked at him. "You were paid." Greg stopped. That was new to the room, not to me, not entirely. The invoice number had told part of it. The payment trail had not been read aloud. Ms. Vance stood. "Your Honor, may I approach?" "You may." She stepped forward. "My client has been acquitted. I'm not counsel for Mr. Mallory, but I need to preserve the record. The defense requested discovery on third-party payments. We received summaries, not the underlying county review." Judge Bell nodded. "Preserved." Sutter said, "The state disclosed what it had." Judge Bell looked at him. "That may also become relevant." Sutter sat down without another word. I watched Alan Pike. He had opened his eyes now. He did not look relieved anymore. He looked like a man who had been pulled out of a ditch and then heard another engine coming. Judge Bell said, "Mrs. Harlan, mark the court's referral sheet." Denise took a form from her folder. "Yes, Judge." Greg said, "Referral for what?" Judge Bell said, "Potential juror misconduct, potential false statement, potential contract fraud." "That's 3 different things." "Yes." Greg looked toward the rear benches. "This is insane." Judge Bell's eyes stayed on him. "Lower your voice." Greg lowered it only a little. Because she didn't like me? Nobody moved. There it was again. She, not my name, not Mrs. Ward, not Juror 14. Greg still needed me small enough to step over. Judge Bell touched the red-striped folder but did not open it. Mr. Mallory, you do not yet understand your position. My position is I helped acquit the wrong man, apparently. Ms. Vance turned. Don't attach that to my client. Judge Bell said, Ms. Vance? She stopped. Yes, Your Honor. Greg pointed toward me. Not high, just enough. She sat in there pretending she knew everything. Judge Bell's voice changed. Do not point at her. Greg dropped his hand. The captain's shoulders came back. The lieutenant colonel looked straight ahead. The chief master sergeant's hands rested at his sides, loose and ready. Judge Bell said, The court has not asked Mrs. Ward to speak. She made herself part of this. No, Judge Bell said. You did. Greg laughed once. It had no strength in it. I called her nobody. That's not a crime. No, Judge Bell said. It was your mistake. That line landed harder than a threat. Greg looked around the room as if someone might agree with him. No one did. Even the people who liked a loud man in trouble knew when a judge had the line. Denise handed Judge Bell the referral sheet. He read it and signed the bottom. This order directs the clerk to preserve all verdict materials, juror questionnaires, admitted Mallory exhibits, and the court security report regarding the call made to Juror 14. Greg stiffened. Call? Judge Bell looked down. You were instructed to listen. I don't know anything about a call. I have made no finding that you do. Then why say it? Because it exists. That was how trained men speak when they want a record to survive the next room. The judge continued. The order also directs the clerk to transmit certified copies of Mallory's civil supply records admitted in this case to the Sandusky County Prosecutor's Office and the County Contracts Administrator. Sutter stood again. Your Honor, I'll accept service. No, Judge Bell said. You will receive notice. The prosecutor's civil division will receive the referral. Sutter's face changed. Small, enough. The state had brought Alan Pike into court. The court had just pointed the map elsewhere. Greg said, This is a circus. Judge Bell closed the brown packet. It became a circus when you thought jury service was cover. Greg shot back, You can't prove that. Judge Bell did not raise his voice. I do not need to prove it today. The room understood before Greg did. This was not the trial. This was the door. Denise stamped the referral order. The sound cracked across the room. Judge Bell said, Mr. Mallory, you will remain available for service. You will not contact any juror. You will not contact Alan Pike. You will not contact Ms. Vance. You will not contact any court employee except through counsel. Greg said, I need my phone. You will receive it when security releases you. My business runs through that phone. Then your business should have stayed out of my jury box. That was the first sentence that pulled a sound from the gallery. A low movement. Someone breathed too loudly. Someone whispered, Lord. Judge Bell struck the gavel once. Order. I looked at Greg then. He had gone from angry to cornered. I did not enjoy it. That matters. I had seen men exposed before. Some deserved every inch of it. Enjoying it still costs something. Greg's eyes found mine. For the first time, he looked at me as if I might be a person, not a rank, not a target, not a note-taker, just a person he had misread. Then he looked away. Judge Bell turned to Alan Pike. Mr. Pike, your verdict stands. You are discharged from the bond conditions in this case, subject to ordinary administrative processing. Alan Pike nodded. His voice came out rough. Thank you, Your Honor. You may leave after signing with the clerk. Ms. Vance said. Thank you, Judge. Judge Bell looked at her. Counsel, I am directing that you receive certified copies of the referral order and admitted Mallory exhibits. I appreciate that. You may need them. I know. Alan Pike turned toward Greg. He did not speak. That silence had more weight than blame. Greg stared at the floor. Judge Bell said, Court will recess for 10 minutes. After recess, the court will address limited juror record matters on the sealed docket. A reporter rose. Your Honor, does that include the unidentified military personnel? Judge Bell looked at him. Sit down. The reporter sat. Denise called, All rise. The room rose. This time, Greg rose fast. Judge Bell left through the side door. Denise collected the papers. The officers stayed where they were. I stayed with them. The gallery broke into controlled noise. Alan Pike signed a form at the clerk's table. Ms. Vance put a hand on his back and guided him toward the side aisle, away from Greg. Greg remained near the front bench with the deputy between him and the rest of the room. Sutter packed his files too carefully. He knew people were watching him now. The captain leaned toward me. Ma'am, we'll wait in the conference room. Thank you. Lieutenant Colonel Harris said, Judge Bell wants you close. I heard. The Chief Master Sergeant spoke low. Do you want water? No. You should drink some anyway. That sounded so much like Daniel that my chest tightened. I said, maybe after. He nodded and did not push. Denise came to my side. Mrs. Ward, Judge Bell asks you to return with us. Now? Yes. We went back through the same side door. Behind us, Greg said something to the deputy. I did not catch it. The deputy answered, No, sir. In the conference room, Judge Bell had removed his robe again. He stood at the table with both hands resting flat on the wood. The red-striped folder was open now. Only one page sat face up. The clearance addendum. Not the citation. Not Daniel's note. Not my full service record. One page. Judge Bell looked at me. I will not read operational details. I understand. I will identify the source and why the record bears on the court's referral. Yes. Lieutenant Colonel Harris said, Judge, the minimum accurate statement is her retired rank, Ohio National Guard Service, Procurement Audit Authority, and the Ethics Clearance Connection. The captain added, and that the clearance predates jury service. Judge Bell nodded. That matters. It did. Greg had hinted more than once that I had brought rank into the room. The record had arrived before I ever took seat 14. Denise said, her packet was sealed at intake. Judge Bell looked at her. Say that again. Denise straightened. Mrs. Ward's juror qualification packet included a sealed Department of Defense addendum at intake. I noted it before voir dire. I gave it to Chambers under the court's standing procedure. Did anyone in the jury pool see it? No, Judge. Did Mrs. Ward ask you to disclose it? No. Did she ask for special treatment? No. Did she ask to be excused? Denise glanced at me. No. Judge Bell made a note. That will be enough. I said, Your Honor. He looked up. Don't make it sound like I hid behind the seal. I won't. I answered every question asked. I know. I didn't volunteer the rest because it wasn't needed. It is needed now. I looked at the paper. Because he made it needed. Yes. That was the clean truth. Judge Bell closed the folder halfway. There is one more issue. I waited. The metal pin. My hand went to my jacket before I could stop it. Judge Bell saw that too. He missed very little. He said, Mr. Mallory referred to it repeatedly. Yes. The court has confirmed it is tied to a federal citation. I did not answer. The room became smaller. Daniel had put that pin in my hand on our last clear morning together. He had not made a speech. Daniel did not waste words when the truth was already in the room. He had said, keep the case locked. I had. Judge Bell said, "I do not intend to read the citation unless the record requires it." "Thank you. But if Mr. Mallory repeats his claim that you presented false authority, I may need to identify it." The Chief Master Sergeant looked at the wall. The captain studied his folder. Lieutenant Colonel Harris kept his face still. I said, "Then identify it. Don't read it." Judge Bell's eyes softened for 1 second. "That is acceptable." Denise checked her watch. 2 minutes, Judge. Judge Bell took up the red-striped folder. "Mrs. Ward, when we return, you may remain standing near the wall. If I address you, answer only what I ask." "Yes, Your Honor." Lieutenant Colonel Harris said, "Ma'am, if your rank is read aloud, protocol may require acknowledgement." "No salutes in court," I said. The Chief Master Sergeant said, "Ma'am, with respect, protocol can stand without a salute." I looked at him. He was right. I hated that he was right. Judge Bell said, "No one will turn this courtroom into a ceremony." "Good," I said, "but the record will not pretend you were nobody." That word sat between us. Nobody. Greg had used it as a broom. Sweep away the woman. Sweep away the notes. Sweep away the risk. Records do not care what a man needs to be true. Denise opened the door. "Judge." We walked back. The gallery had grown again. The hallway outside courtroom 2 had people standing shoulder to shoulder. Some were county employees. Some were courthouse regulars. A woman from the recorder's office stood with a paper cup in both hands. A man from the Park Avenue diner was near the back, still wearing his apron. Mill Creek likes a bridge trial. It loves a courthouse correction. Greg was seated now. A young lawyer stood beside him. He must have called fast. The lawyer had a narrow tie and a new briefcase. Judge Bell took the bench. "All rise," Denise said. Everyone rose. The officers rose with the room. I was already standing. Judge Bell sat. "Be seated." Greg's lawyer remained standing. "Your Honor, Daniel Kessler for Mr. Mallory, limited appearance." Judge Bell said, "Noted." Mr. Kessler said, "We object to any further inquiry without notice." "This is not an evidentiary hearing on criminal liability," Judge Bell said. "This is a court record matter arising from juror conduct and admitted exhibits. We still object. Preserved." "Mr. Kessler sat," Greg whispered to him. Mr. Kessler put a hand down, palm flat. Quiet. Judge Bell opened the red-striped folder. He did not lift the page yet. "The court will make a limited sealed record statement," he said. "It will be narrow. It will explain why the court acted when it did." Pens moved again. This time no one whispered. Judge Bell said, "During voir dire, Juror 14 disclosed prior public service and prior procurement-related work when asked. The juror did not disclose rank because rank was not asked, and the court did not require it for qualification." Mr. Kessler rose. "Your Honor, I object to identifying the juror." "You do not know what I will identify. I'm protecting my client. Sit down." Mr. Kessler sat. Judge Bell continued. The juror's file included a sealed Department of Defense ethics clearance addendum. That addendum was provided before jury service. It was reviewed by Chambers during trial after concerns arose regarding outside pressure and possible undisclosed juror conflicts. Greg's face went still at outside pressure. Judge Bell turned the page. The addendum confirms the juror had prior lawful access to procurement oversight matters tied to infrastructure audit support. It also confirms those matters were closed to her in active service before this trial began. That was the false bottom, not the rank, not yet. It told the room I had not brought a secret into the jury room to use as a weapon. It also told Greg there had been someone in his jury box who could read his world. The room felt it. Greg felt it last. Judge Bell said, The court finds no misconduct by Juror 14. The court finds no basis to disturb the verdict as to Alan Pike. Ms. Vance closed her eyes briefly. Alan Pike's shoulders dropped. Judge Bell's voice hardened. The court does find sufficient basis to refer Mr. Mallory's disclosures, admitted company records, and conduct during proceedings for independent review. Mr. Kessler stood. We request a stay of referral. Denied. Your Honor. Denied. Denise stamped another copy. The sound was smaller this time, but Greg flinched. Judge Bell looked at him. Mr. Mallory, you are released from this courtroom only after security confirms receipt of the no-contact order and preserves the phone log from today. Greg's lawyer said, we object to the phone log. Preserved. Greg leaned toward him. Tell him he can't take my phone. Mr. Kessler whispered back, stop talking. Greg did not stop. That phone has client information. Judge Bell said, then your counsel may address privilege with the prosecutor, not with me, not from the front bench. Greg stood. This is because she wore a pin. The courtroom froze. Mr. Kessler pulled at his sleeve. Sit down. Greg shook him off. No, everyone sees it. She wore that thing and acted above us. The Chief Master Sergeant's chin lifted. Judge Bell said, Mr. Mallory. Greg pointed again, higher this time, right at my jacket. She's not special, he said. She's nobody with a medal. The word hit the room and failed. That was new. Before the word had landed on me. Now it landed on his own feet. Judge Bell's hand moved to the red-striped folder. Not fast, not slow, exact. Mr. Kessler said, Your Honor, I apologize. Judge Bell did not look at him. He looked at Greg. Mr. Mallory, he said, you have mistaken restraint for emptiness. Greg's mouth opened. Judge Bell lifted one page from the folder. The paper had the seal at the top. Even from the wall, I could see the letterhead. Department of Defense. Judge Bell did not read it yet. He turned the page so Greg could see only the seal. You will sit down, he said. Greg sat. Judge Bell placed the page on the bench in front of him. The officers behind me came to attention. Not fully, not for display. Their bodies knew the line before the room did. Judge Bell looked toward me once. I did not move. Not yet. Judge Bell looked back at the page. The court did not intend to identify further military record material today, he said. Mr. Mallory has made that necessary. Mr. Kessler rose halfway. Your Honor. Judge Bell did not look at him. Sit. Mr. Kessler sat. Greg's face had color in it again, not courage. Panic can look like courage when a man is standing in public with no clean road left. Judge Bell said, Mrs. Ward wore a small service pin in this courthouse. She did not explain it. She did not invite questions about it. She did not use it to influence deliberations. Greg stared at the bench. Judge Bell said, You used it. Nobody moved. There was that word again. Used. Not noticed. Not misunderstood. Used. Judge Bell picked up the page. The sealed addendum in Juror 14's file was transmitted from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base through proper court channel before jury selection. It bears Department of Defense Ethics Review Number DOD-OH-NGB-14-772. My mouth went dry. That number had sat in locked folders for years. I knew it the moment he said it. 14 for the office, 772 for the Bridge Audit Group. Daniel had circled that number once in pencil and said, That one will travel. It had traveled farther than he meant. Judge Bell read from the page, careful and flat. The addendum confirms that Ellen M. Ward, retired, held lawful procurement oversight authority over state federal infrastructure audit support, including Ohio National Guard Liaison Review with County Transportation Vendors, fiscal years 2012 through 2018. Greg blinked. The room changed again, not louder, tighter. Judge Bell lowered the page. That authority ended before this trial. It does not disqualify her. It does explain why Chambers took her notes seriously when admitted exhibits did not match testimony. Mr. Kessler stood. Your Honor, I renew objection. Preserved. This is prejudicial. To whom? Mr. Kessler stopped. Judge Bell waited. No answer came. Judge Bell said, The verdict has already been received. The referral is administrative. The prejudice you are worried about is not from the court. It is from your client's own words and records. Greg whispered, Don't just stand there. Mr. Kessler kept his eyes forward. Mr. Mallory, stop. Judge Bell turned the page over. There was only the back now. White paper, no seal, no rank visible to the gallery. He could have stopped there. He almost did. I saw it in his face. The old JAG caution. Say enough for the record. Say no more. Keep the court clean. Then Greg spoke again. She checked gravel, he said. That's not authority. A deputy shifted near the wall. The chief master sergeant's hands closed once and opened. Judge Bell leaned forward. Mr. Mallory, this is your last warning. Greg's voice went thin. You're making her bigger than she is. Judge Bell sat back. The courtroom went silent. Not quiet. Silent. Judge Bell said, No, Mr. Mallory, I am naming what you refused to see. He looked toward me. I felt the floor under my shoes. I felt the metal pin against my jacket. I felt Daniel's locked case at home on Maple Street, still in the drawer where I had left it that morning. Judge Bell's voice carried to the last row. General, please rise. For 1 second, I did not. Not because I had not heard him. I had heard every sound in that courtroom. The scrape of Greg's shoe, the reporter's pen stopping, Alan Pike's breath catching somewhere near the side aisle. I had spent years answering to rank. I had also spent years putting it away. Judge Bell did not repeat himself. He did not need to. I rose. The captain behind me came fully to attention. Lieutenant Colonel Harris came with him. The chief master sergeant's back straightened, heels set. No salute, no ceremony, just recognition with discipline. Then the back of the courtroom started to move. A man in the gallery stood first. I did not know him. He was older, with a county road department jacket over his arm. Then the woman from the recorder's office stood. Then Alan Pike stood. Ms. Vance stood beside him. One bench after another. Not everyone knew protocol. They knew decency. Greg stayed seated. Judge Bell let that stand for 3 breaths. Then he said, Be seated. The room sat. I remained standing because he had not released me. Judge Bell looked at Greg. You called her nobody. Greg's mouth tightened. Judge Bell looked at the record again. The court will correct that. He lifted the page. Ellen M. Ward retired from the Ohio Army National Guard as Major General Ellen Ward after 36 years of commissioned service. Her record includes command of the 37th Infantry Brigade Combat Team's Support Command, Ohio State Active Duty Flood Logistics in 2005, Joint Logistics Coordination during 2008 ICE Response, Procurement Integrity Review Assignment at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 2014, and appointment to the State Federal Bridge Materials Audit Task Group in 2016. He paused. That pause was not for drama. It was for accuracy. He continued. The service citation attached to the court's sealed verification states, in relevant part, that Major General Ward upheld procurement integrity across multi-jurisdictional infrastructure contracts while protecting the public record from falsified delivery certifications. He set the page down. That is the pin on her jacket. Nobody clapped. That was right. This was not a banquet. It was a courthouse. Judge Bell said, "Mrs. Ward, you may sit." I sat. My knees felt older than 62. Greg looked at the table. He did not look at me now. Judge Bell turned to Denise. "Enter the limited statement under seal with public notation that no juror misconduct was found." Denise said, "Yes, Judge. Transmit the referral today." "Yes, Judge. Include certified copies of Exhibit 21. Sutter looked up. Ms. Vance did too. Greg's lawyer said, "Which exhibit is that?" Judge Bell looked at him. "Your client's signed invoice." Greg spoke before his lawyer could stop him. That invoice was explained. Judge Bell said, "It was admitted. It's just a date." "No," Judge Bell said. "It is 2 dates pretending to be one." The room understood the shape of it then. I had written it in my notes with a blue pen. Truck 18, Fremont Quarry, Ottawa County scale ticket. Sandusky delivery log, same driver, same morning, same load weight. Impossible miles. I had not solved a mystery. I had kept the line straight. Judge Bell said, "The court is not trying Mr. Mallory today, but the record reflects testimony that Mallory Civil Supply certified delivery at 8:15 a.m. on April 12th, while the same truck number appeared on a Toledo Way receipt at 8:47 a.m. Ms. Vance said softly, 42 miles. Judge Bell looked at her. "Counsel." She lowered her eyes. "Yes, Your Honor." Greg said, "Trucks share numbers sometimes." Sutter shut his folder. That told me more than any answer he had given all day. Judge Bell noticed. He always noticed. He said, "Mr. Sutter, remain seated after recess." Sutter froze. "Judge?" "You heard me." Mr. Kessler stood again. His voice had lost its courtroom polish. "Your Honor, may I confer with my client outside?" "No." "Judge, I need to advise him." "You may advise him where he sits." "In front of the gallery?" Judge Bell said. He chose the gallery when he stood up. Greg's face changed. For the first time, he seemed to understand the thing he had done to himself. Not the fraud, not the referral, the public part. He had wanted me corrected in front of people. Now the same room had turned. That is the trouble with public shame. It does not always obey the person who starts it. Judge Bell said, "Mr. Mallory, you will surrender your phone to security now." Greg held it tighter. "I told you. Client information." The deputy stepped forward. "Sir." "Mr." Kessler leaned close. "Give him the phone." Greg whispered, "They'll ruin me." Mr. Kessler said, "You're helping them." Greg looked at the deputy. The deputy waited. Greg put the phone on the table, not gently, not hard enough to count as defiance, just enough to show he still needed one person in the room to think he had control. The deputy placed it in a clear evidence sleeve. Denise wrote the time on a label. Judge Bell said, "The phone is preserved pending proper review. No search is authorized by this order." Mr. Kessler said, "Thank you." Judge Bell looked at him. "Do not thank me for limits your client tried to outrun." Mr. Kessler sat. Then Sutter stood. It was a mistake. He knew it after his knees straightened. "Your Honor," he said, "for the state, I want to clarify that our office relied on available materials." Judge Bell said, "Sit down." Sutter stayed up. "Judge, I think the record should reflect that we did not conceal anything." Judge Bell's face stayed even. "Mr. Sutter." "We presented what was provided." "Sit down." Sutter sat. That was the second villain showing his hand without meaning to. Greg had been loud. Sutter had been polished. Both men wanted the same thing from the record. They wanted it to stay narrow. Judge Bell turned to Ms. Vance. Counsel, did the defense request the complete vendor chain during discovery? Ms. Vance stood. Yes, Your Honor. When? March 3rd. Again March 27th. Again during trial. Was it provided? Partially. Sutter stood again. Your Honor, that misstates. Judge Bell said, if you stand once more without permission, I will have you explain discovery compliance under oath. Sutter sat so fast his chair tapped the rail. Ms. Vance kept standing. Judge Bell said, did Exhibit 21 come from the state file? No, Your Honor. Where did it come from? Subpoena returned from the county contracts administrator. And who recognized its significance? Ms. Vance glanced back, not at me, at my notebook, still sealed in a clear court pouch near Denise's station. The jury asked to review the invoice, she said. Judge Bell said, the jury did. Who asked first? Ms. Vance did not answer right away. I wished she would not. That wish did not matter. She said, Juror 14. Greg muttered, of course. Judge Bell heard him. Mr. Mallory, the next sound from you will be through counsel. The young lawyer touched Greg's sleeve. Judge Bell looked to Denise. Mark the jury note. Denise lifted a second folder. This one was not red-striped. It was ordinary court stock, cream-colored, public material. She read the notation. Jury question, dated yesterday, 2:11 p.m. Request to compare Exhibit 21 with mileage testimony of witness Carl Benton and delivery log Exhibit 9. Judge Bell said, read the court's response. Denise read, jurors may review admitted exhibits and admitted testimony only. No outside calculations. No outside maps. End response. Judge Bell said, and did the jury reach its verdict after that review? Denise said, yes, Judge. Greg's mouth moved. No sound came out. Judge Bell turned to the gallery. This court will not have the false story repeated. A juror did not import private expertise to convict or acquit anyone. A juror asked to compare admitted records. That is what juries are supposed to do. Alan Pike's hand covered his mouth. His wife was not there. I remembered that from voir dire. He had said she could not miss work in Toledo. I hoped someone would call her before a reporter did. Judge Bell said, Mrs. Ward, you are excused from further juror availability in this matter. I stood again. Thank you, Your Honor. Before you leave, Chambers will return your sealed materials. Yes, Your Honor. Greg looked up. His face had gone flat now. Some men rage until the bill arrives. Then they get very still. Judge Bell said, Mr. Mallory. Greg's lawyer touched his arm again. Let me answer. Judge Bell said, this is not a question. Mr. Kessler lowered his hand. Judge Bell said, you will remain in the courthouse until security receives written acknowledgement of the no-contact order. You will not approach Mrs. Ward in the hall. You will not ask another person to approach her. You will not speak to the press about her service record. If you discuss this matter publicly, you may discuss your own conduct. Greg swallowed. Judge Bell said, do you understand? Greg said nothing. Mr. Kessler whispered, answer. Greg looked at Judge Bell. I understand. Judge Bell nodded once. Court is recessed. Denise called, all rise. This time I rose with everyone else. Judge Bell left the bench. The gallery stayed standing after he was gone. For a few seconds, nobody knew what to do with themselves. Then people began gathering papers, collecting purses, stepping into the aisle. The noise returned in pieces. Not gossip this time. Processing. A deputy moved Greg and Mr. Kessler toward the front conference room. Greg passed within 15 feet of me. His eyes lifted once, then dropped. He did not say a word. That was his first decent act of the day. Lieutenant Colonel Harris stepped to my side. "Ma'am?" I said, "Don't." He stopped. I had not meant it sharply. It came out that way. His face did not change. "Understood." The Chief Master Sergeant handed me a paper cup of water. I looked at it. He said, "No speech attached." I took it. "Thank you." The water tasted like courthouse pipes and paper. It helped anyway. Denise came through the side gate. She held the red-striped folder against her chest. "Mrs. Ward," she said. "Chambers." I followed her through the rail. As we passed Ms. Vance, she stepped aside. Alan Pike stood beside her, both hands folded around a copy of his discharge form. He said, "Ma'am." I stopped. His voice was rough again. "I don't know what to say." "That's all right." He nodded. "You looked at the dates." "So did the whole jury." "No," he said. "You made them." Greg's words still hung in the building. Nobody. Alan Pike was trying to hand me a different one. I did not take it all the way. I said, "Go home, Mr. Pike." He looked down at the paper in his hands. "I'm going to call my wife first." "Good." Ms. Vance said, "Thank you, Mrs. Ward." I looked at her. "Use the exhibits." "I will." "Don't make me the case." She understood that. Good lawyers do. She said, "I won't." Denise waited at the side door. Behind me, a reporter called, "General Ward, can you comment?" I kept walking. The captain stepped into the aisle. He did not block the reporter with drama. He simply stood where a person would have to be rude to pass. The reporter chose not to be rude. In chambers, Judge Bell was already at the table. His robe was folded over the chair. The red-striped folder lay closed in front of him. He looked older without the bench above him. Denise handed him a receipt sheet. He signed it. Then he turned the folder toward me. "Mrs. Ward, this remains sealed. The court copied only the limited statement." I put my hand on the folder but did not lift it. Judge Bell said, "I read less than I could have." "I know. I read more than I wanted." "I know that too." He sat back. "You should not have had to stand in that room." "No." Denise looked at me then. She had kept herself professional all morning. Her eyes were tired. She said, "I'm sorry your packet became public even that much." "It didn't become public because of you." "No," she said, "but I held it. You held it correctly." That mattered to her. I saw it land. Judge Bell said, "The county prosecutor will receive the referral by close of business. The contracts administrator will receive notice. Ms. Vance will receive the admitted exhibits." "And Sutter?" Judge Bell's jaw moved once. "He will answer through his office." That was not nothing. Judge Bell tapped the folder with one finger. "There is also the matter of your jury notes." "They belong to the court now?" "For preservation, yes, not for public release." "Good." "I saw your timeline." I waited. He said, "Clean work." A younger me would have felt proud. The woman I was now only felt tired. "I keep the line straight," I said. Judge Bell nodded. That line saved the verdict. It saved the record. He looked at me for a long second. "You're right," he said. Denise handed me a small padded envelope. "Your pin case was in your property tray. Security brought it back when they moved your coat." I looked at it. The envelope was not locked. The case inside was. Daniel's case had a small brass latch that stuck if you opened it too fast. He had never fixed it. He said a thing that made you slow down was not always broken. I took the envelope. My thumb pressed the corner. Judge Bell said, "Do you need a private room?" "No." Denise said, "There's a clerk room empty." "No," I said again. Softer. "Not yet." If I opened it in that courthouse, Daniel would come into the room too. I was not ready to do that with fluorescent lights overhead and referral forms on the table. Judge Bell understood. "Then we're done here," he said. I nodded. "Thank you, Judge." He stood. So did Denise. Not for rank, not for ceremony. For a woman leaving a hard room. I opened the chamber door myself. The hallway had thinned, but not emptied. Courthouse people know how to look busy while waiting for the rest of a story. The woman from the recorder's office was at the water fountain. The man from Park Avenue Diner held his apron in one hand now. He looked at me and lowered his chin. I returned the nod. The officers walked with me toward the stairs. Lieutenant Colonel Harris said, "Ma'am, there's a side exit." "I know." "The front has press." "I know that too." The Chief Master Sergeant said, "We can clear a path." I stopped near the old caseboard with yellowing notices pinned under glass. "No." The three of them stopped with me. I looked toward the front doors. Past them was North Park Avenue, and beyond that the square, and beyond that Maple Street, my house, my desk, Daniel's case. Greg had taken enough roots from me that day. "I'll use the front," I said. The captain gave one small nod. "Yes, ma'am." We walked through the courthouse lobby. Reporters turned, phones lifted. A county employee whispered my name, then stopped when she realized I could hear it. One reporter stepped forward. "General Ward, did you know Mr. Mallory before trial?" "No." "Did your military work involve his company?" I stopped at the bottom of the steps. The officers stopped behind me. I said, "Ask the record." "Can you say how you caught the invoice problem?" I compared admitted dates. "Do you feel vindicated?" That was a poor word, it always is. I looked at the reporter. He was young, too young to know when a question sounded borrowed. "No," I said, "I feel finished." I pushed open the courthouse door. The afternoon air hit my face, warm, damp. July in Mill Creek does not pretend to be gentle. On North Park Avenue, traffic moved around the square. A delivery van paused at the light. Someone across the street raised a hand, then seemed unsure and lowered it. I walked down the steps. Behind me, I heard the courthouse door open again. "Mrs. Ward." It was not Greg. It was Mr. Kessler. The officers shifted, but I turned. The young lawyer stood 2 steps above me. He looked pale now, and less new. "My client wants to speak with you," he said. "No." He nodded fast. "I advised against it." "Good advice." He asked me to say he didn't know. I looked at him. The old anger rose. Small, but real. "Didn't know what?" Mr. Kessler had no answer ready. I gave him one. "My name was on the juror sheet. My answers were in voir dire. The exhibits were on the table." He knew enough. Mr. Kessler looked down. "I understand." "No," I said. "You heard it. That's different." He took that without defending himself. That counted for something. I turned back to the sidewalk. Then Greg's voice came from the doorway. "Mrs. Ward." The officers moved this time. I lifted one hand. They stopped. Greg stood behind his lawyer, inside the open courthouse door. A deputy stood close to him. He could not come farther. His face had no performance left in it. He looked smaller in daylight. "I called you nobody," he said. The reporter nearest the curb raised his phone higher. Greg saw it and flinched. Then he kept going. "I was wrong." That was the apology scene. One was enough. I did not walk back to him. I did not forgive him for the room. Forgiveness is not a courthouse form. I said, "Then remember what it cost." Greg nodded once. The deputy touched his elbow. Greg stepped back into the courthouse. Mr. Kessler followed him. The doors closed. The Chief Master Sergeant said nothing. That was why I liked him. Lieutenant Colonel Harris said, "Do you need a ride to Maple Street?" "No, I'll walk." "Ma'am, it's warm." "I've been warm before." The captain almost smiled. Almost. I stepped onto the sidewalk. The officers stayed at the courthouse steps. They let me go alone because I had asked. That was respect, too. At the corner, I passed the Park Avenue diner window. Inside, the lunch counter was full. The owner saw me and reached for the door. I shook my head once. He let the door stay closed. By the time I reached Maple Street, my blouse had started to stick at the collar. My shoes made small sounds on the porch boards. The house was quiet when I opened it. Quiet can be mercy. I set the red-striped folder on my desk. Then I took the padded envelope from my purse and opened it. Daniel's metal case slid into my hand. Dark wood, brass latch, one scratch across the top from the move after his service at Rickenbacker. I had meant to polish it for years. I pressed the latch slowly. It caught. Of course it caught. I pressed again. The case opened. The pin lay in its small velvet cutout. Beside it, folded once, was a piece of paper I had not put there. For a moment, I just looked at it. Daniel's handwriting was easy to know. Block letters, no flourishes. He had written supply orders for half his life. Even love looked organized in his hand. I unfolded the note. Let the record speak when men will not. I sat down before my knees decided for me. The house stayed quiet. I read it once, then again. There was no speech in it, no farewell, no instruction to be brave. Daniel knew I had heard enough speeches in my life. He had left me one sentence because one sentence was enough. I put the note on the desk beside the pin. The red-striped folder sat next to it. For years, I had treated silence as discipline. Most days, it was. But silence and carrying someone else's lie are not the same thing. The phone rang. I looked at it. For half a second, I thought it might be the courthouse again. It was Denise Harlan. I answered. Mrs. Ward. Her voice was lower than usual. I'm sorry to call after you left. What is it? The contracts administrator just brought something to Judge Bell. I looked at the red-striped folder. What kind of something? A courier receipt, she said. Mallory Civil Supply filed a correction yesterday morning. Before the verdict? Yes. What did they correct? Denise exhaled once. The truck number, she said. They changed truck 18 to truck 81. I closed my eyes. 18, 81. Flip the digits. Save the lie. Did Greg sign it? No, Denise said. That's why I called. I opened my eyes. Who signed it? Denise was quiet for one beat. Assistant Prosecutor Sutter witnessed it. Say that again. Sutter witnessed it, Denise said. His signature is below the correction. I looked at Daniel's note until the letters stopped moving in my eyes. Where is Judge Bell? In chambers. Who else has seen it? The contracts administrator, Judge Bell, me. Not Ms. Vance? Not yet. Not Greg? No. That was the first clean thing in the new mess. I stood and picked up the red-striped folder. Then I stopped. The folder did not belong in the open now. It had already done its work. Denise? Yes. Does Judge Bell need me? He said only if you're willing. That was Judge Bell's kind of order. He knew the difference between service and being used. I looked at the metal case. The pin sat in the velvet, small and still. I'll come back, I said. You don't have to. I know. I hung up and put Daniel's note in the case. Then I took the pin out. I had not worn it into the courthouse after the hearing. I had put it away because I was tired of people looking at it before they looked at me. That was over. I pinned it to my blouse with steady hands. The clasp was stubborn. It always had been. I pressed until it caught. Outside, Maple Street was quiet. A neighbor's sprinkler clicked across a strip of grass. A postal truck idled near the corner. Ordinary things kept moving after hard rooms. That is one mercy of ordinary life. I drove back to North Park Avenue because walking would take too long. I parked behind the courthouse near the employee entrance. A deputy I had seen earlier opened the side door before I reached it. "Mrs. Ward," he said, "Judge Bell inside?" "Yes, ma'am." His eyes moved to the pin, then back to my face. He did not ask. Denise met me at the corridor by the clerk's office. She had changed out of her courtroom jacket. Her blouse sleeves were pushed to her elbows, and there was ink on the side of one finger. "He's in courtroom 2, she said. Courtroom 2? Public record room was too small. That told me enough. We walked together. I could hear voices before we reached the door. Not a crowd. Not yet. The sound was tighter. Lawyers, clerks, 2 deputies, someone from contracts. People who understood paper could move faster than rumor when it had a judge behind it. Denise touched the door handle and paused. "He asked me to warn you," she said. "Sutter's here." "Good." She looked at me. I said, "I'd rather see his face." Denise opened the door. Courtroom 2 was smaller than Judge Bell's main room. The ceiling was lower. The benches had deeper scratches. The state seal hung behind the bench, faded at the edges. Judge Bell sat at the table below the bench, not above it. His robe was back on. That meant he wanted the authority seen, but not hidden behind height. Vance stood near the prosecution table with Alan Pike beside her. Alan had come back. His discharge form was folded in his coat pocket now. He looked at me once, then looked away. Good. This was not his burden to carry. Greg sat on the other side with Mr. Kessler. He looked up when I entered. His mouth tightened. Assistant Prosecutor Sutter stood near the end of the table. He had both hands on a file box. His face had gone past red into gray. The contracts administrator was a narrow man in shirt sleeves. He held a clipboard and a courier envelope. Judge Bell saw me and stood. He did not say my rank this time. He did not need to. "Mrs. Ward," he said, "thank you for returning. I'm here because Denise called." "I asked her to." Sutter turned his head toward me. For the first time since I had seen him in that courthouse, he did not look annoyed. He looked careful. Careful men worry me more than angry ones. Judge Bell pointed to the front bench. "You may sit. I'll stand." He nodded once. "As you wish." Mr. Kessler rose halfway. "Your Honor, my client objects to reopening any matter in the presence of a discharged juror." Judge Bell looked at him. "Your client may object through a written motion. This is a preservation hearing." Sutter said, "Your Honor, that term is irregular." Judge Bell turned slowly. "So is witnessing a correction to an exhibit tied to your own trial." Sutter's lips pressed together. Silence filled the room. Not quiet. Silent. Judge Bell said, "Denise, mark the courier receipt." Denise stepped to the clerk's station. Court's Exhibit C for preservation only. The contracts administrator handed over the envelope. Denise opened it with a letter knife and removed 2 pages. Judge Bell said, "Read the heading." Denise read, "Mallory Civil Supply, correction to delivery invoice, County Bridge Aggregate, Job 41-B, submitted yesterday at 8:42 a.m. Judge Bell said, "Read the corrected line." Truck number corrected from 18 to 81. Greg shifted in his chair. Judge Bell said, "Mr. Mallory." Mr. Kessler put a hand on Greg's sleeve. "Don't answer." Judge Bell said, "I have not asked a question." That was the second time that day he had used that line. This time it hit harder. He turned to Sutter. "Mr. Sutter, is that your signature?" Sutter looked at the page. He did not lean close. He had already seen it enough. "Yes, Your Honor." "When did you sign it?" "Yesterday morning." "What time?" "I don't recall exactly." Denise lifted the receipt. "Courier intake says 8:42. Judge Bell said, before closing arguments. Sutter said, It was an administrative correction. Ms. Vance laughed once. She stopped herself, but it was too late. Judge Bell did not look at her. Counsel. She lowered her head. Sorry, Your Honor. Judge Bell faced Sutter again. Who brought you the correction? Sutter looked at Greg. There it was. Greg's eyes closed for half a second. Not long. Enough, Mr. Kessler stood fully. Your Honor, I need to confer with my client. You will, Judge Bell said, after this record is preserved. Sutter said, a county employee brought it. Name. I'm not sure. Try. Sutter's throat moved. Carl Benton. Alan Pike looked up then. Ms. Vance turned to him. Don't speak. Alan kept both hands at his sides, but his jaw set. Judge Bell said, Carl Benton testified under oath that Truck 18 made the delivery. Sutter said, he later clarified. Clarified where? In the correction. That you witnessed. Yes. Before the jury asked to review Exhibit 21. Sutter did not answer. Judge Bell said, before the jury asked. Yes. And you did not disclose it. It wasn't admitted evidence. Judge Bell sat back. Mr. Sutter. Sutter lifted his chin. Judge Bell said, you are an officer of this court before you are anything else. Sutter looked at the floor. That sentence had weight because it was plain. I watched Greg's hands. He kept rubbing his thumb over his wedding band. He had not done that earlier. Earlier, he had pointed. Now his hands needed a job. Judge Bell said, Mr. Mallory, did you authorize this correction? Mr. Kessler said, he invokes. Judge Bell said, noted. Greg stared at the table. Judge Bell turned to the contracts administrator. Was Mallory Civil Supply under audit before this trial? The man swallowed. Preliminary review. Based on what? Repeated invoice substitutions. Say that plainly. Truck numbers changed after delivery. How many? 6 in the first batch. Same bridge job? 3 on job 41-B, 2 on county road base, 1 on culvert stone. Ms. Vance reached for a pen. Judge Bell said, Ms. Vance, you will receive the certified packet through the clerk, not from your own notes. She stopped writing. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Bell looked at Denise. Bring in the sealed juror file. For a moment, my breath changed. Denise looked at me first. That small look mattered. Then she went through the side door. Sutter said, Your Honor, I object to using Mrs. Ward's sealed materials again. Judge Bell's eyes moved to him. You object? Yes. On what ground? Privacy. That almost made me smile. Almost. Judge Bell said, Whose? Sutter had no answer worth saying. The side door opened. Denise returned with the red-striped folder. She placed it on the table in front of Judge Bell and did not step away until he touched it. Judge Bell said, This court has already read the limited statement necessary to address a false accusation made in open court. I will now read one additional line. It explains why the correction was material the moment it reached a prosecutor. Sutter said, Your Honor. Judge Bell lifted one hand. Sutter stopped. The room waited. Greg looked at the folder like it had become a person. Judge Bell opened it. He removed the same sealed letter, still clipped at the top. He did not smooth it. He did not perform. He read, Ellen Ward, retired Major General, Army National Guard, served as Delegated Review Authority for Procurement Integrity Audits connected to joint state and federal infrastructure support contracts, including vendor networks later cross-referenced through Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, contracting review. Sutter's face emptied. Judge Bell kept reading. Clearance maintained for ethics consultation through May 2021 with no adverse finding. He lowered the page. That is why this mattered, he said. Not because Mrs. Ward brought outside knowledge. Because the state had a juror capable of recognizing a procurement defect from the admitted record, and the state had a prosecutor who received a correction before she asked the right question. No one moved. Then Judge Bell looked at Greg. You called her nobody. Greg did not raise his head. Judge Bell said, This court has now read the record twice. It says otherwise. The words did not need volume. They reached every corner. Sutter gripped the back of a chair. Judge Bell turned to Denise. Prepare referral to the county prosecutor and the disciplinary authority. Include the correction, courier receipt, Exhibit 21, Exhibit 9, and the jury note. Denise said, Yes, Judge. Send a preservation order to Mallory Civil Supply. Yes, Judge. To Benton Halling. Yes, Judge. To the prosecutor's office server administrator. Sutter looked up. Your Honor, that's excessive. Judge Bell's voice stayed level. You are relieved from this matter pending review. Sutter blinked. By whose authority? Mine, in this courtroom. Your office can decide the rest. Mr. Kessler whispered something to Greg. Greg shook his head once, then he stood. Mr. Kessler caught his sleeve. Greg. Greg pulled free. Not hard, just enough. He looked at Judge Bell. I gave Benton the correction. Mr. Kessler closed his eyes. Judge Bell said, Do not continue without counsel. Greg's voice was dull. I know. Then sit down. Greg stayed standing. Sutter told me the jury wouldn't see it. Sutter said, That's a lie. Greg turned toward him. You said the old invoice was already in. You said the new one wouldn't matter unless somebody noticed. Sutter took one step forward. The deputy moved first. Back, the deputy said. Sutter stopped. Judge Bell said, Mr. Mallory, sit. Greg sat. Mr. Kessler leaned close and spoke into Greg's ear. Greg did not answer. His eyes had found the pin on my blouse. I did not cover it. Judge Bell said, Mrs. Ward. Yes, Your Honor. You are not a witness in this hearing unless subpoenaed later. I will not ask you questions now. Good. A few heads turned. Judge Bell did not mind. He said, Your jury service remains completed. Your notes remain sealed. Your identity was already exposed beyond what it should have been. This court will not add to that injury. Thank you. Judge Bell closed the red-striped folder. Then he did something small. He slid the folder back to Denise with both hands, like fragile things deserve two hands. Denise took it the same way. Alan Pike stepped forward before Ms. Vance could stop him. Judge. Ms. Vance said, Alan. He stopped, but Judge Bell looked at him. What is it, Mr. Pike? Alan's voice shook. Does this mean the verdict holds? Judge Bell said, The verdict stands unless a higher court says otherwise. Alan nodded. Judge Bell added, But the contract records do not. Alan put one hand over his mouth. He lowered it fast. Thank you. Judge Bell said, Thank the exhibits. Alan looked at me then. I shook my head once. He understood. He looked at Denise instead. Thank you, ma'am. Denise looked surprised. Then she said, You're welcome. That was better. Judge Bell rose. This hearing is adjourned for preservation purposes. Counsel will remain. Mrs. Ward may leave. The deputy opened the side gate for me. I walked toward it. Greg spoke before I reached the aisle. Mrs. Ward, Mr. Kessler said, Greg, stop. I turned. Greg stood again, slower this time. The deputy watched him. Sutter watched him too, with open dislike. Greg said, Nobody checks county gravel. The room tightened. He swallowed. I said that too many times, he said. Turns out someone did. Judge Bell did not interrupt. Greg looked at the table. That's all. That was not an apology. It was better than one. It was a man admitting the sentence that had ruined him. I said, "Then answer the next question honestly." Greg nodded once. Mr. Kessler pulled him back down. I left courtroom 2 with Denise beside me. The hallway outside was not empty now. Word had moved through the building. It always does. The woman from the recorder's office stood near the copy machine with a stack of forms. The Park Avenue diner owner had come back, apron folded under one arm. 2 younger clerks stood by the stairwell. They did not whisper this time. Denise carried the red-striped folder against her chest. At the clerk's counter, a young man in a county badge waited with a small plastic sign in his hands. I had seen him before at the security desk. He looked barely old enough to shave every day. "Ms. Harlan," he said. Judge Bell approved the wording. Denise took the sign. It was simple white plastic with black letters. "Juror records are confidential. Questions about service history go to the court." Denise read it once, then handed it back. "Mounted by intake," she said. "Eye level." The young man nodded. "Now." "Now." He left with a screwdriver already in his hand. Denise watched him go. "We should have had that before." "Yes." She looked at me. "We'll have it before the next one." That was the concrete thing I needed to hear, not a speech, a screw in a wall, a rule where people could see it. We walked toward the back corridor. Denise said, "Do you want your file mailed back?" "No. Keep what the court needs." "And the rest?" "Seal it until the retention date, then destroy it by policy." She nodded. "That's what I would have done." "I know." At the side door, she stopped. "I almost missed it," she said. "Missed what?" "The clearance line. Your addendum was thick. Most people attach old employment forms, training certificates, things they think matter." "It did matter. I know that now." "No," I said. "You knew it then. That's why you paused." Her face changed. "Not much. Enough." She said, "I wasn't sure I had the right to notice." "That's a hard habit to break." "Yes," she said, "it is." Behind us, courtroom 2 opened. Sutter came out between 2 deputies. He was not cuffed. This was not that kind of moment. But both deputies stayed close. His jacket was over one arm. His tie knot had slipped. He saw me. For 1 second, I thought he might speak. Denise stepped half a pace forward. She did not block him. She simply occupied the line between us. Sutter looked at her instead. "This is unnecessary." Denise said, "The record disagrees." He looked like he wanted to answer. Then he looked at the red-striped folder in her arms and kept walking. The deputies took him toward the administrative stairs. Denise exhaled through her nose. I said, "Good line." She looked at me. "Too much?" "No." She smiled for the first time that day. It was small and tired. The back door opened to the employee lot. Heat lifted from the pavement. My car sat in the second row, windshield flashing under the sun. Lieutenant Colonel Harris stood near it. I stopped. Denise said, "I didn't call him." "I know." He held his cover under one arm. The captain stood with him. The chief master sergeant leaned against nothing, hands behind his back. They had waited far enough away to be polite and close enough to be useful. Lieutenant Colonel Harris said, "Ma'am." "Did Judge Bell call you?" "No, ma'am." "Then why are you here?" The chief master sergeant answered, "We saw Sutter come in." That was all he said. I looked at the 3 of them. "You have posts." The captain said, "Not today." Harris corrected him. "Flexible schedules, ma'am. I should have sent them away. That would have been clean. But clean is not always kind." I said, "I'm going home." The chief master sergeant nodded. "We'll follow to Maple Street." "No." He waited. I said, "You can follow to the corner." The captain almost smiled again. "Yes, ma'am." Denise handed me a copy of the preservation order. For your records. I took it. This one isn't sealed? No, public order, limited facts. Good. She touched the folder once. I'll take this back. Denise. She looked up. You held the line when it started moving. Her eyes shone, but she did not let a tear fall. Thank you, Mrs. Ward. I did not correct the name. Mrs. Ward was enough. I drove away from the courthouse with the 3 officers in a sedan behind me. At the corner of North Park Avenue and the square, they turned off as promised. I watched them in the mirror until traffic hid them. Maple Street looked the same when I returned. Sprinkler off, postal truck gone. A child's bicycle lay in a driveway 2 houses down. Inside, the house held its quiet. I placed the public order on the desk. Then I unpinned the metal and set it beside Daniel's note. The brass latch waited open. I folded the paper once, put it back inside, and closed the case slowly. The latch caught on the first try. I set Daniel's metal case in the desk drawer. The pin stayed beside his note, bright against the wood.